What is good, everybody? Happy Wednesday. Welcome to the Tip-Off, the show that sets the stage for all the most important news, daily fantasy plays, and bets on tonight's 2-game NBA slate and 6-game MLB slate. I am your host, Kayla Knierim. That was a vibe, Jordan, bringing us in on a Wednesday. Loved it. Today we've got Eric Lindquist, Chris Spags. Fellas, good to see your faces. How we doing?
I think I'm excited. I'll speak for Eric as well. We're excited to see you back here. Obviously, Eitan did a great job filling in, but I will say, the bubbly personality, perhaps not quite there. Eitan more of a caustic type. I don't know if he eroded any of Eric's confidence. We might have to build it back up today over the course of the show.
Oh, come on. I'm fine. I feel good. I'm coming off of dropping my Chalkquist nickname. I'm still Slash. You can still see that. So, I still have stupid nicknames that are going to surround me for the rest of my life. But for the most part, Kayla, we missed you so much. It is nice to have somebody that is going to really pique everyone's interest in the chat that you are not going to be looking at today in order to not have your computer crash.
Thank you. Yes, I am working with some spotty Wi-Fi today, and Zoom's already gone down twice, so I'm not going to make my computer work harder than it needs to. So hi, chat. I won't be listening or watching, but thank you for tuning in. All right. Get access to all the great Awesemo Plus tools and content for nearly every DFS sport out there with an Awesemo Plus weekly pass for $29.95. This includes full access to all the premium content and tools on Awesemo.com, including player projections, ownership projections, our premium Slack channel, lineup builder, and much more. Only looking to play NBA DFS? Then sign up now for our Awesemo Plus NBA weekly package for only $16.95 and our $4.95 NBA Weekly Express package, which gives you full Awesemo Plus access to NBA Showdown and single game contests. Stop guessing, start winning. Join Awesemo Plus today. And as always, friends, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for countless hours of content on the NBA, MLB, NHL, PGA, MMA, NASCAR, and every other sport that's in season. All right, guys, let's get to our bad beats here. Last night saw some incredible performances from the studs like Anthony Davis, Luka Doncic, Kawhi Leonard, while also seeing some of the less chalky value pieces such as Joe Harris and Cameron Payne go insane. Do you two have enough of these pieces? Did you two have enough of these pieces? And how are any future bets looking for you? Spags, let's start with you.
Yes, I will say the one thing that I don't like to do the patting on the back thing, because there's many people who can sort of, nickel and dime you the other way, where you give a lot of takes on the shows like we do on this show, like we do on all the other content we do here. But I will say for our Live Before Lock show yesterday, it was a bit of a haul where we had some trolling going on in chat. Some guys who were, for whatever reason, some people on the internet a little more worked up recently about how their results are going in DFS and trying to, poke holes in, I guess, in what we're doing on those shows in response to it. And I will say we dug our heels in on a few plays during that show, two of which happened to be Maxi Kleber, and I'll default to our guy Eric here on the other one. But I felt like we brought good information yesterday. I know I saw a good amount of tweets from people who did well, including our own Jordan Klein, who made sure to point out that he does watch every show, which we're truly blessed that our producer of all of our shows watches our shows. But I think that to me was the main thing, where I broke even on the night, didn't whatever. Maxi Kleber was fine. Robert Williams is terrible. That's what my night was. But just getting those victory laps right now in a day where I think we needed it is really what I'm going to point to as a good beat.
Yeah, I think Cameron Payne worked out, so that was nice. It was very nice to have a dude at 4%, 5% across the industry just completely smash. The logic worked out really well. It was just one of those spots where you could see it playing out a certain way, and you have to be able to make stands like that on 2 and 3 game slates, which is kind of what we've got for the rest of the way in. So it was nice to have that payoff for everybody. He's a great fantasy point per minute producer, and it was nice to see that come to fruition. Got a lot more meaningful run, and obviously Chris Paul is definitely hampered and limited. That being said, Luka Doncic got a rebound with 1.1 seconds that cost me about 3.6K on the late slate, which you want to talk about bad beats. It's like no good deed goes unpunished. So that last rebound put him just over the edge. There was a 3 or 4 lineup train in the late slate on the $15 that ended up passing me. So that was sad, but otherwise it was just nice. And it was so great to see everybody's messages, to have something that the chalk master himself came up with that ended up panning out for all of you.
Love it. Love it. All right, let's head into NBA playoff game 2s. We've got the Wizards as they head into game 2 versus the Sixers as significant dogs once more, but surely have some fantasy point firepower in Russell Westbrook and Bradley Beal will want to roster. So Eric, do you have a lean on which one fits better into your lineups? And is there any way you can see this team covering the 8-point spread tonight?
Value is garbage today if you're not going to be playing some of these Sixer pieces. I mean, not only that, but then you have Royce O'Neal. Like we're gonna be trying to figure out ways that we can pay up for some of these guys, and mixing and matching dudes in the 3-4K range sounds nifty and all, but I think I'm gonna have to be prioritizing Bradley Beal simply because I don't know how I can prioritize Russell Westbrook. So looking over at FanDuel, Bradley Beal's at the shooting guard position, and him and Donovan Mitchell are basically in lockstep around 30%. I'm definitely preferring Bradley Beal between the two of them. And then going over to the point guard position, you have Derrick Rose, Ben Simmons, Trae Young, Ja Morant, Mike Conley. There's a number of dudes that I think still have some upside, specifically the first four I mentioned, maybe not Mike Conley, but I think I like kind of getting some of my value at that position because there's so many dudes who can go for 35, 40 out of that grouping. And that feels a little bit more comfortable than trying to take shots on some of the cheaper shooting guards. But I'm primarily playing most of my exposure over on FanDuel today. And so that's going to kind of be my one take, is a little bit more Bradley Beal over Russell Westbrook.
Yeah, I think just from the price perspective, like I would like to be able to get to the fields 25% of Russell Westbrook on DraftKings today. I just don't know how I make that work and don't greatly depreciate the quality of my lineups. And that's sort of the main thing, is trying to keep that projection. I think Awesemo off says within 15 fantasy points of the top projected lineup, what the optimal or what everybody's going to think the optimal is. And I think for me, it does get a little bit tougher with Westbrook just because the value does look pretty hard to get to. At the same token, though, I don't think Bradley Beal is quite as good of a play as some of these other guys on the slate who are a little bit cheaper at positions where it's not that hard to get to, and I think the builds work better. So I think I'd prefer to find ways to get to Westbrook just because it is so difficult, and there is certainly potential here. This team now has their backs against the walls, and that's something with the playoffs it's crucial, where you're going to see a lot of Beal minutes, you're going to see a lot of Westbrook minutes. That core rotation is going to be there because you don't want to go down 3-0, you don't want to get in these spots that are going to be impossible to dig out of. And I think that's something for me where Westbrook will be playing more minutes. You would hope he has better results than he has. I think forcing your way there to me is more appealing at the relative ownerships than trying to just plug in Beal and hope it works out.
The Sixers are by far the most popular team on the slate, with 4 of the top 6 most owned plays on both sides tonight. So rank out your top plays from each, and are there any of them you might be lighter on compared to the field Spags?
So I think in terms of ranking plays, to me, Ben Simmons still looks like the best play relative to value. Tobias Harris, though, not that far behind. I certainly think those two guys are basically 1A and 1B for me. It's sort of hard to parse them out, but they should be core parts of what you're doing, because I think even if you expect Washington to be better today, there's no world where Washington can blow out Philadelphia. So the best result for them is just keeping it competitive longer to the end of the game, kind of more like game one. I think that, to me, is what you're hoping for Ben Simmons and Tobias Harris. So those guys, to me, feel like about as secure plays as you want. I think those are the guys you also are starting your lineup when, if you're playing cash today. But Joel Embiid certainly in the mix too. I think the price tag for him, much like Westbrook, going to be tougher to get there. If you can get there, it's great. It's a good spot where he actually projects as decent value despite that lofty price tag. But can you get there is the question with the value on the slate. So to me, that's what makes him a little bit lower priority. And same thing for Danny Green, who is value adjacent. I guess you could say he's value, like another guy who isn't that good for the most part, but has had some decent days against Washington. Should have some more upside if he heats up. So those are the guys that I would rank. And then the rest of the guys, Seth Curry is a guy who ran well for me earlier in the series, but I don't have the confidence going back to him today. I think these guys you could sprinkle in, but those ones would be the priorities for me.
Yeah, it's looking at Joel Embiid. I mean, 10-1, I think, on DraftKings and FanDuel. Like, it's not that I don't absolutely love him, but when you're comparing it to Ben Simmons and Tobias Harris, which are underneath 8K and can kind of like slip into lineups easier on DraftKings, and then 8,100 for Ben Simmons on FanDuel, like basically the same number. Like, putting those two together in lineups is going to be a very popular chalky build. If you're making a bunch of lineups, you're going to obviously have all of them intersect. I was thinking that last night, 2 Sixers in every lineup would kind of be chalk. It's going to be closer to about 3 because of Danny Green and Seth Curry on both sides, kind of getting mixed and matched along with those pieces. But as you said, Joel Embiid's going to be tough to get to, and that might be the reason that you do want to kind of go there. If you can go Westbrook and Joel Embiid and hope that it's just a back and forth between the two, that they can kind of shoot it out. But because of how expensive they are, it's just so hard because the value is not very good. So if you're not going to be going heavy with either one of them, you're fading them putting up 70 plus. But, at some point in this series, obviously it did not happen game one for Joel Embiid with only 41.5 over on DraftKings. And, Westbrook continues to do Westbrook things, but he's the one who's at really the difficult price range. And 43.75 on DraftKings, you were dead in the water if he puts that up again. Philly's a tough defense, but I think I'm probably leaning towards a little bit more Joel Embiid than Russell Westbrook. And I think that's just because I think I need that 1,300 to spread around my lineups on DraftKings.
Atlanta's Trae Young had a massive game 1 in the Garden and will be looking to repeat that performance against a slow-paced Knicks team. So, Eric, what's your interest level in him and the rest of this Hawks team?
So similar to putting Russell Westbrook and Joel Embiid into lineups together and hoping that they're going to duel, I think that there's some viability to going Trae Young and Julius Randle. This is not a particularly great game environment. Looking at it, 212 basically for a total around the industry over on OddsShopper, and you're looking closer to 230 for that Washington 76ers game. But if it were to somehow shoot out a little bit closer, get around to 220, 225, you got to think that Trae Young and Julius Randle are going to be some meaningful offensive pieces here. I think going to the under of his points prop might be a good way to go. I think he can spread it around, but I mean, those assist numbers, 32, 10, and 7, that was an awfully good stat line, very well-rounded. He is the focal point of what they're doing offensively, and I got to like having some Trae Young, but 9K over on Fanduel, 8,500 on Draftkings, up against this Knicks team. I got to think that they're going to make some adjustments to make it more difficult, and we'll see what that ownership comes in at as the day goes on, but right now around 29%. On DraftKings, that seems a little bit heavy for me. I would rather just go to more Simmons for cheaper. And then 26%, we'll see where you need to play 2 point guards, how easily it is to get to him at 9K. Right now, it's a little bit more difficult. Probably also going to be siding more on the Simmons side of things there. But yeah, gonna be a contrarian spend up, I think, compared to guys like Simmons, Harris, and Embiid.
Yeah, I think that's a reasonable take to have with Trae Young, that you're in particular with what you're talking about. And I do think the ownership for Trae Young, like, it wouldn't shock me with some of the narrative that's been around him, where like he looked like, I think, a star both in a lot of fronts here, but a star to the point where like people were covering him like, oh, Trae Young loves being the villain. He's shushing the crowd at MSG. Like, there's a lot of things I think going towards Trae Young right now that's going to drive that ownership higher than it probably should be, where he looks great at his price tag. But if he does get clamped down, if they do really go out of their way to sell out, if he just kind of wilts under the pressure of that increased spotlight this game, you don't really know with a guy like Trae Young in this first time playoff run for him. So I think to me, being with the field on Trae Young seems like a reasonable move. And I think I'll be surprised if I get a lot more than the field. So hopefully that pans out. I'd also throw John Collins in the mix. John Collins, I think, is a pretty interesting play. Overall, just relative to the price tag, should see more increased minutes. So still some ways that Atlanta could kind of jerk him around as they have all year long. But to me, Trae Young and John Collins were the priorities. But I would just watch the Trae Young ownership and try to be cautious with it, because I think people may really just spin themselves into playing a lot more Trae Young than they probably should.
Julius Randle had the opposite experience of Young in game 1 as he struggled to get anything going against the Hawks interior. Spags, do you think he and the rest of this Knicks team can even the series tonight? And any other pieces from this team to take shots on?
I do think the Knicks even the series tonight. Like, I am a believer there. I think the Vegas total making them a favorite, it certainly gives you a little bit of hope. But I think really for me, the main thing is I do expect this to be a competitive series, and I find it hard to believe it's going to be quite as competitive if the Knicks drop their first 2 games at home. So in this spot, I think Julius Randle brings it. I know some of the chat's talking about fading Randle already, and I feel like to me that's a move that as long as the field's not going to be there too heavy, I would definitely not fade Julius Randle. I think he's at a nice price tag, one that's going to have a lot more upside, and he's killed Atlanta all year long, where it's the playoffs, things are going to play tighter, all that. But he had one bad game, and now treating him like he's a different player to me just seems like a bad move. I think in the spot, Julius Randle looks great. I think the guy on paper who looks the best, though, is probably going to be Derrick Rose. The minutes for him have been very secure. He's going to be a chalk play today, so that's something to keep in mind with the ownership on both DraftKings and FanDuel. But I think relative to price, he probably looks the best. Randle to me more of the tournament option. And I'd also throw in Nerlens Noel as somebody who's usable, and Taj Gibson I think will be in my lineups as well as a value play on a day where there is no value. The bigs for New York, I hate it. The bigs for New York, though, you kind of have to play here because there is no value. These guys are kind of reasonably priced, do have some upside. Their size is needed. So to me, one of Noel, one of Taj, both guys value plays that nobody will want to play, but would not shock me at all that one of them ends up in the winning lineup.
God, even just hearing that sentence doesn't sound right, but I'm in the same boat. Taj Gibson, pretty darn freaky to think that I'll be having exposure to him tonight, but that's just kind of the slate that we've been given. It's not the slate that we want, but it's the slate we've been given. And therefore, in the words of the Dark Knight, we must go on. Let's find some kind of, okay, I want to find a sports betting angle here too, because I think that there is something that I want to recommend that seems strange. I think that there are some alternate spreads that exist at any of the popular sports books that we have listed on OddsShopper. I think, first of all, I want to slam the New York Knicks -2. I want to absolutely slam it. My bad dog for the night is definitely the Atlanta Hawks. 75% capacity at Madison Square Garden tonight. That is a big number. It's going to be rocking. It's going to be an incredible game environment. And you want to talk about home court? There's actually a home court that exists at Madison Square Garden right now that won't exist at probably any other spot in the entire league right now. Maybe Trae Young likes being the villain, but I don't think he's going to like Reggie Bullock and Derrick Rose in his pocket the entire night. That I know. But I do want to kind of make a push towards the alternate spreads. 10 plus New York Knicks going to go out and absolutely do work.
So we did just lose our girl Kayla, it looks like, due to her connection going on at her island getaway for herself. But Eric, the good news for you is that A, I'm well equipped to handle the hosting. Oh, Kayla's coming back. Well, B, I did have a replacement ready for Kayla just in case, and I'll just bring on camera real fast because we can get out of the way. My replacement for Kayla, I know, right? Callie's right here, but no, it's in fact my new friend Puppet Lindquist, who is a guy that I've gotten to know very well. He's not Eric. He's perhaps has some similar tendencies. And I don't know if we want to give the floor to old Puppet Lindquist here, but I'd like to, if you guys are okay with it, I'd love to introduce.
The floor is yours, Spags. I mean, by all means, go for it.
Well, I guess I should give him the floor then overall. Hey guys, it's me, Puppet Lindquist, and it's just great to be on the show. And I know you see this appearance right now, and we all look at Eric, and I think we can all say this isn't the first time that somebody with that last name has had a hand up there. Oh, Puppet Lindquist, you can't go. That's a rude thing to say. But either way, I'm now rehashing old office bits for myself by breaking Puppets into the mix as Eric's eyes bug out much deeper. But going to be a great show today, and if Kayla drops off, I'm right here for it. Talk all the talk.
I mean, I don't even know how to follow that up, but this is the best thing that's happened to the show since Eric played his guitar last week.
This is worse. This is much, much worse. What? Okay, first of all, I think that's an outfit I would wear. Let's pull the puppet back up again.
Bring it back. Yep,
yeah. It's a polo. I'm pretty sure I have a kindergarten picture in that shirt. I'm sure I do.
Side by side.
There's some sneakers. Oh my Lord.
This is what I wear to the golf course to get my mid game has not been the best, but I'm pretty good at the approach. Wink.
Spags, did you order this? Was this your idea or was this sent by the company?
I know this is a decision that occurred perhaps on a Friday night when your old pal Spags maybe had a few too many wobbly pops, wobbly truly teas, and decided, hey, now's as good a time of any to buy a new friend, and that's what we really are. Is more than anything. It's not a bit. It's just a friendship that'll last forever. Oh.
I'm so sad I don't have the chat open.
Let me just tell you, it's exactly what you would expect. It is nice to know Mr. Lindquist. He is deceased. I can't decide which center to pick for night slate. Somebody asked for a take in the middle of this. Which center for the night slate?
One would be my thought. That's generally going to be a winning approach for most DFS players.
But more importantly,
myself.
Can someone tell me where we were?
We just finished the Knicks, so feel free to take it back over. I'm just glad I don't have to continue to read that run sheet. What a crap run sheet. I mean, come
amateur
on.
hour over here.
Oh my god. Honestly,
wow.
I'm extremely impressed. I'm flattered. Also, I hope you die in a fire. These are all things that I'm hoping simultaneously.
Well, I think this puppet's cheap enough that my felt might be flame retardant.
That thing's going up in smoke. Yeah. All right. It's kind of like today's show. Memphis game one away from Utah on the backs of Dylan Brooks and Kyle Anderson. Considering they're nearly 10-point dogs, do you think they can repeat the performance? Eric, if you can compose yourself.
Yeah, I'm going to give a take here. Memphis. Yeah.
You need water.
We're talking about Memphis, right? Or are we talking about
Yes,
the
we are talking about Memphis.
Okay,
correct.
Yeah,
yes.
we're past that. I don't know how many minutes Donovan Mitchell is going to play, but here we are. Yeah, Dylan Brooks, all of these guys are just too expensive. They're splitting minutes. They're splitting production. If I had to pick one, I mean, we've seen Dylan Brooks with the upside. I'd rather capitalize on some recency bias. How do I do this? What do I do? What do I do with my, Okay, so looking around DraftKings right now, John Morant, I would say he's not going to project out phenomenally well, but 12.6% we've seen as recently as, I don't know, 2 games ago against Golden State, 46 minutes. I guess that was overtime, but 41 minutes in regulation, and he had already smashed at that point in time. There's a ton of upside that exists for a guy like John Morant. Him and Jonas Valanciunas, I think you just want to go to the 2 best plays that like the 2 players that are going to get the most usage. And then I'm still going to continue to take shots on Jaren Jackson Jr. One of my favorite props of the entire day is the over on 11.5 points for him. He has 5.9 fouls per 36. It's a garbaggio number. Second worst on the slate next to Dwight Howard, who only plays like 17 minutes and basically is going out there to beat up on people. But Jaren Jackson Jr. Supposed to be playing more minutes than when he's played 15 and 24 minutes. I think that also makes him very viable for DFS, but specifically over 11.5 points. He's been shooting 21.4% in his last 2 games, 3 for 14 from the field. I think that that's going to improve. So if you want to bet a prop today, if you want to head over to OddsShopper, take the over on it. One of the best on the board, Jaren Jackson over of 11.5 points.
Yeah, I think for the DFS perspective, to me, Jonas Valanciunas is the one that jumps out, and it's certainly a risky spot for him. There's a lot of ways for him to kind of be played off the floor. And I do think really for all these guys, to me, Memphis is the team to go to for your tournament plays on the slate, where if you get John Morant in, he has one of those outlier days. I think that's very possible. Jaren Jackson, Eric just talked about, certainly a player who could spike that upside a bit more. I think Kyle Anderson can get through the accumulation of stats, but the main thing for me is these guys all at price points that aren't fantastic. Dylan Brooks, maybe some people will chase that a bit more than the ownership projections, but still under 20% expected ownership. So for the slate, if you take one Grizzly and put him in with whatever you think is a good lineup, besides that, I think is just a move that could pay off today. And you do have to hope that, Memphis keeps it competitive and does, sort of bring it back to Utah. But I would say overall, that to me is the move. Memphis is the sort of a tournament team where if you sprinkle 1 or 2 in, you're probably going to get some decent results.
All right. And lastly, Donovan Mitchell will make his return after a 1.5-month absence, which should make a number of the Jazz pieces significantly less appealing. So Spags, do you think his return rights the ship for Utah, and any props or bets that might stick out as a result?
I would say the Mitchell return certainly would, to me, on a site like No House Advantage, which is a little bit, later to sometimes adjust the lines, that I might not be as inclined to take some of the Jazz players props today because of the fact that they might be reflecting the fact that Mitchell isn't in, or at least, reflecting it to some degree where the ROI gets a little bit lesser than it would be otherwise. Besides that, I feel like really to me, the main play that I would go to today is Rudy Gobert. I don't believe the price tags properly reflect the situation where Conley's going to get less usage. Jordan Clarkson's going to get less usage. Bojan Bogdanovic going to get less usage. These guys are, again, tournament options today because they'll be less owned. But I really don't know how you get to these guys without just sort of closing your eyes and ignoring the median outcome, which is hard to do on these slates, I think, in particular. And we have seen tournaments, tournament winning lineups recently that have basically just ignored the metrics of value that we go to, and players do spike that upside. So maybe you can go to Bojan and Joe Ingles just as tournament plays, but in terms of a median projection, these guys look substantially worse. And I don't know how you get to anybody besides Rudy Gobert.
He is the only one I will roster. I will have 0% Donovan Mitchell. I will have all of the Rudy Gobert. Rudy Gobert is basically unaffected. He's going to continue to see the rebound rate. He needs to be on the floor a bunch. He's the stalwart of that defense. Absolutely love Rudy Gobert and absolutely despise going to anybody else, including Donovan Mitchell, who right now is getting the exact same ownership over on Fanduel as Bradley Beal, rated 30%. And that just makes no sense to me whatsoever. I have so many question marks about Donovan Mitchell, what these minutes could look like. I know that they're probably not going to put him out there until he's really ready to go. And, the trainers made a big call in game 1 to basically say, you're not playing today. And it was kind of a ballsy move, but it's good for his long-term prospects. But, if he doesn't look completely comfortable out there, I just don't know what it's going to look like. So another great player prop to be targeting at the under of 25.5. That's all. We lost Kayla again, didn't we?
Guess I'm back into duty time for me. My star is ready to shine. Puppet Lindquist. It was unclear if it should be Eric Pupquist, but that kind of sounded like a dog. So we ended up going with Puppet Lindquist as the brand. And these are the questions you got to ask yourself when you're a busy puppet on the go.
We got to keep Kayla in the middle there. She looks like she's on, what does she look like? She looks like she's on Handmaid's Tale. And she's not in a good place right now.
She looks like she's taking a passport photo that she would hate. is how I feel about that one right now. But let's keep
You are
going.
just smashing today. This is absurd.
Well, here's the good news, guys. Whether Kayla is active or not, we are here to do a show for you guys. So make sure you hit that like button. Please hit that like button. I'm not here doing poor man's ventriloquism to not get likes. So please help us out and hit that like button today and do that right now. Hopefully Kayla will come back shortly. And also make sure to go check out all of our products at awesemo.com/join. It's a great time to be a DFS player right now. It's a great time to play a lot of sports. Have some time if you're hanging around for the holiday, maybe not going out of town, nothing better to do than plunk down some money, play some DFS tournaments to pass the time. So make sure to go check out all of our offerings at awesemo.com/join. But it does seem, do we have a guitar today, Eric? I don't know if we do.
No, just Awesemo tells the future. Awesemo tells the future. Nah, Awesemo tells the future. There it is.
So there we go. So let's talk about the AL MVP, which apparently has been a bugaboo of our fellow coworker Nerd Ass Greg, who got himself to a nifty little Twitter debate arguing Vlad Guerrero Jr. versus Shohei Ohtani for American League's most valuable player considerations. Now, at their current numbers on OddsShopper, we're going to ask, do we have a lean for each of these guys or any of these guys? Which one would you want to invest in? And I feel, oh, here comes Kayla. Kayla's back again.
This is so much more nuanced than just the camera flipping on and off.
Sorry, Jordan. I just saw your Slack. Are we having fun yet, guys? It wouldn't be a true show if I wasn't having technical issues, you know?
Oh, we got more puppet time. I think that's fine. It's fine. It's not as good as having you run the ship and bring us the joy that you normally do. But the good news is we did have that fallback today.
Well, thank God for that, because we need it.
We are on AL MVP, Kayla, and I did the intro already, so you don't have to read it if you don't want. But if you want to read it again, that could be equally entertaining for everybody out there.
By all means, fellas, take it away. Awesemo tells the future. The floor is yours.
Well, I guess we can go over some of the odds and maybe just plunk down a few of these. And let's go with the debate that Nerd Ass Greg had on Twitter himself, Shohei Ohtani versus Vlad Guerrero. And I have to admit, Greg doesn't watch the shows that he doesn't do. I don't check Greg's Twitter, so I don't know what's going on over there. Probably all sorts of inappropriate DM slides. But Shohei Ohtani versus Vlad Guerrero, Show right now, plus 135 odds, Vlad plus 450 odds. Eric, I presume you looked this up. So what was the side that Greg had? And do you agree with his side?
I think he had the side of Vlad for taking a look at, I think his odds were sitting a lot worse there. They've come crashing down to about plus 450. So he's gaining a lot of positive feedback from bettors. The money's starting to flood in on him a little bit. I think I'm at this point in time staying away from both. I love Shohei Ohtani. I think everybody knows how big of a stan I am for that guy. WRC plus is not really a basis for the argument. I think I don't think voters are necessarily factoring that in. What they see is a two-way player who throws a 100-mile-per-hour splitter and does some unbelievable things, or the cutter that he has. It's just one of those once in a generational type talents. But at any point in time, he could get hurt. We've seen him already go through Tommy John. We've seen some other things happen with him. I think there's a wear and tear that can take place on a player that's playing two ways. And so at this point, what those numbers are at, sitting, what did you say, plus 135 here at the moment, I think that's definitely a stay away. I think it would probably have to be Vlad if I'm going towards either one of them, but I'm going to advocate for one guy that I think that we might have to be taking a look at even a little bit further. JD Martinez. So if they're going to start just continuing to hit, JD Martinez is just a straight out hitter. And as the summer starts to be cutting in for some of these East Coast teams, whether that's Aaron Judge or JD Martinez, I kind of think that we're going to see some of their numbers start to take off. It's been warmer out here in California for a guy like Shohei than it has been in some of these other parks for quite a while. Vlad Guerrero plays in a AAA ballpark here at this point in time, and it's going to be hot down there constantly, but it's still going to be a good hitting environment either way. I think there is some ground that JD Martinez and Aaron Judge can make up just by hitting once it starts to get really, really hot with the humidity out on the East Coast.
Yeah, I think the Shohei Ohtani pick is interesting. And I do think there is sort of a public charge that you're taking with this one where, I think Eric was just spelling out there, a lot of people are going to be impressed by, hey, this guy's getting strikeouts, he's getting hits. It's so great and all of that. At the same token, though, he's not quite Mike Trout. And Mike Trout's been in the hunt for the MVP for enough times by now. But still, it's a losing team. It's a team that's not any better with Shohei taking kind of that lead dog role. So I feel like if you end up comparing the two, it's like Shohei Ohtani is a lesser version of Mike Trout who pitches better. I don't know that's the MVP sort of narrative that you would want to spin. I do think Vlad is one that's a little bit more, but I would tend to agree. I think JD Martinez at plus 2,000, Aaron Judge at plus 2,000, Xander Bogaerts as well at plus 2,000. These guys are big city names that are also potentially going to be in the hunt to win something major. And I know that's not as important for baseball, for NBA, where basically you have to have a winning team to win that MVP award, or at least, a top three team. You're not going to get there in an adverse condition quite like you well in MLB sometimes, but do you think winning does help? Being in the major market does help. So to me, taking a stab at one of these guys at plus 2,000, like you are paying a steep price tag on Shohei Ohtani, and one that I think by the end of the year, like it wouldn't shock me if his odds are substantially lower just because you have more guys in the mix and we just have more of a sample size of Ohtani getting hit a little harder too as a pitcher, as not always going to be clearing a ton of strikeouts every single game.
Love it. Anything else you two want to add?
I just love watching you sweat bullets over there. You're just waiting for everything to go wrong. And you're just like, yeah, no. And I just see the terror on your face. Did she just freeze as soon as I said that? Did she just freeze again? Like, as I said that? How unbelievable.
Yes, it's my time to shine once more.
Oh my God.
Better passport photo for Kayla, though. I think we could all agree with that one. But hey, we guess we got to keep it going here. It's also kind of fun. I'm just going to go back to my voice for now. Puppet Lindquist did a good job transitioning. I would say for us, it is tough because this was going to be a segment that I think we were supposed to get clipped and put on the channel, and I don't know at this point now. This is going to be usable.
I don't know. She looks like a freeze frame in the 90s when they'd always go.
Like the double mint or whatever that, or like a sitcom credits thing. Yeah, there's a lot.
It's like a Saved by the Bell, the very last scene where it's like,
yeah, everybody jumping up and high-fiving in slow-mo, but we got to keep it moving here. I know people want to talk more sports, and we will do that for you guys as we always do on the tip-off. Jeffrey Wilson, incredibly mad. Hey, Jeffrey Wilson, here's a puppet for you. Hey, Jeffrey Wilson, maybe you shouldn't be such a downer. We're just trying to have fun on a show where one of our hosts continues to drop offline, so sometimes you got to make the best of it and also figure out puppet character motivations as you go. So that's sort of a thing to keep in mind, Jeffrey. But I would say in this spot, we will continue to go forward and get you some more sports in the mix. So just bear with us. Sometimes it is a haul here on the tip off. We got biggest bat coming up next though, and this is going to be today's MLB props for the day. We got time to head to the diamond. Some of the top bets we talk about as always here, and the biggest bats today going to be a fun mix here. Rougned Odor plus 250, Aaron Judge plus 280, Kyle Schwarber plus 280, Rowdy Tellez plus 290, and Jock Peterson plus 300. And Eric, I got to the intro, so I'll throw it to you first. Which of these guys here stand out to you as a good pick to hit home run today?
Let's just kind of like stick with this whole narrative. Like obviously every single Yankee up and down the lineup seems to be popping meaningfully on the top of the end. I like Aaron Judge plus 280. He's again, as the temperature starts warming up, that's a guy that I definitely want to be bullish on in the same way with JD Martinez. Just going to start hitting in a meaningful way here for this team. Yeah, I really don't even know what else to say. I was just so confused looking at Odd Shopper because I had to double check at a couple books. Yoshi, what is his name? The new guy from the Dodgers.
Yoshi Tsutsugo, who I think was on the Rays before, but yeah.
Yeah, he was like at plus 265 a second ago, and now it's fallen off. He's in the 8 hole for the Dodgers today, and that just confused me so much. And so even seeing his name there, but Max Muncy might be another guy at plus 310, but probably going to be gearing away from taking some of these numbers. They just seem to be juiced a little bit more than normal. I want to be trying to get to guys who are like plus 320 or worse. I think that's kind of going to be the route that I take most of the time on these props, because 3 to 1 chance of having something occur. They would basically be having to hit 55 home runs over the course of a season over 162 games in order to kind of like out project that. So I think it's probably a stay away, but Aaron Judge would be my pick.
Yeah, I think that the Aaron Judge pick is interesting, and I don't agree with the Rougned Odor pick. I don't know what the deal is there, but they are going against a pitcher coming up for his first start from the minor leagues, and Alex Manoah. We talked about at great length on the MLB Deeper Dive today. A guy's had a 40% K rate for himself, and I think if you're taking that Odor bet, you're taking Odor as the highest odds guy and a pitcher who should get some strikeouts and should be much better than people realize. I think you are paying some unfortunate juice on that one if you take that bet. But I would say I agree with your take. Aaron Judge to me looks pretty solid. One guy that I would consider going to as well, I think, would be Kyle Schwarber, because to me for DFS tonight, the Nationals look very overowned, and that's something we talked about at great length. If you want to check out the Deeper Dive to hear more full-length takes from both Alex Awesemo Baker, as well as myself and Max Motrisky on there, go tune into that one. But Nationals, one of the more overowned teams on the slate, so get your exposure to Kyle Schwarber. Hope he hits home run over Jeff Hoffman, a guy who is certainly going to be a little better than he was at his Coors days, but still not a good pitcher by any stretch. Let's jump over to our biggest arm, and we're going to ask the question, which of these top 4 odds getters on Odd Shopper do we think is the best strikeouts over bet tonight? We'll also talk if there's a good under bet. We got Tyler Glass now, 8.5 strikeouts on the day. Trevor Bauer, an over under 7.5. Herman Marquez, 6.5, another DFS chalk play. Chris Paddock, 5.5. And I'll take this one first, Eric. I will say for me, it's Tyler Glass now. I just generally like what he's doing overall. As a DFS play, this doesn't fit the corollary I normally talk about of trying to get my exposure to guys through the prop betting market that I wouldn't get in DFS situations. But for Glass now, I do think he's one of those guys that sort of fits the criteria across the board, pitching over 6 innings per appearance, has the best strikeout rate on the slate with 36% K rate for himself. Not a Kansas City team that strikes out a lot, but I just think, trusting the arm talent in some of these matchups we've seen work enough times, both for the biggest arm bets as well as in DFS with guys like Brandon Woodruff this week is one example I'll keep beating the drum of, but trust the good arm. And I think to me, Tyler Glass now is just one of the better arms and not quite as adverse of a situation as Trevor Bauer is.
Yeah, I absolutely love that. That's my pick as well. There was no way that I was not playing Tyler Glass now as the over of 8.5 here. As you said, just crazy amount of arm talent. Also been pitching deeper into games. He did not look as good last time out, but part of that, he ended up getting well over 100 pitches. They ended up giving a full week of rest coming into his start last Friday. I know that because I run him up on Yahoo, and getting an opportunity to have him up against Casey, as you said, they don't strike out at a crazy clip, but he's got a chance to go really deep into this game. And also 47% hard hit percentage at ex-WOBA 270. Like he's just a phenomenal pitcher. And there's no way that I'm not going to be going towards the arm talent when I'm taking over of K props.
Let's keep it moving here. We got the No House Advantage prop or not next. And of course, we do very much appreciate our friends over at No House Advantage to make sure you are playing over there on a daily basis. But some interesting props today. And I think these are ones that are going to be affected by some of that Donovan Mitchell news that we talked about earlier in the show. But Joe Ingles, 1.5 3-pointers made. Eric, tell me, how would you handle this one tonight on No House Advantage?
So we're going to be looking at shorting a lot of Utah Jazz. And I think that that's kind of like, if you can pick the right guys in a DFS perspective, like who we want to kind of be relying on, congratulations. You are much sharper than I am here at this point in time. Because other than Royce O'Neal and Rudy Gobert, like Royce O'Neal is basically a product of the slate. He's the only guy who's going to be playing like 30 plus minutes, who's at that price range, for a power forward, small forward. So I like getting to a little bit of Royce O'Neal. I forgot to kind of touch base on him, which is why I'm circling back. But Joe Ingles, his opportunity is going to go way down, and we see it go way up when you have Donovan Mitchell off the floor. If he was going to go off, it would have been game one. I think it's going to be difficult for me to want to go to the over of any of his props around the industry today.
Yeah, this is one from Awesemo that does have an 82% chance of hitting the over, which gives me some concern because I think there are pathways here for Ingles to get the minutes. And this one, to me, I get why it's a high probability prop to hit, but I just think I would be inclined to stay away from it. I think it's an easy one, but it's one where Joe Ingles, all it takes is sort of them giving him his normal run where he's going to be certainly cut into by having Donovan Mitchell, Conley, Clarkson, all those guys available, but still he can knock down 2 shots. I think it's just like not a high enough number for me to get there. I do think, if you want to trust the Awesemo projections, as you should more than me and my idiot ramblings more often than not, you certainly should do that. But to me, I just have enough concerns with Joe Ingles that I'd be a little bit less inclined to take that one as a top bet on the day, at least in some portion of lineups. Let's talk about the next one. We got Donovan Mitchell, 35.5 points plus rebounds plus assists. Eric, I'll throw it to you first.
Yeah, so this is kind of going back to what I was talking about. And again, the over looked really fantastic over on Awesemo. I think for me, it was just more of a stay away. And it was surprising to me to see it be the highest number on the entire board. This one, I definitely want to be taking the under of. I don't know what the production is going to look like. Rebounds plus assists getting incorporated into it. Like, I think you're basically fading points as being the primary part of that. If you want to just move down and take points plus rebounds, that seems to be about the same amount of odds. And I think that would kind of be another spot to go. But considering you're seeing assists get added to that portion, I mean, 5 assists for Donovan Mitchell, if he's going to be on the floor for 27, 28 minutes, as opposed to 34, 32, I guess is what the projection we have for him today. I love this under, and I think it's another spot where it's good to be shorting all of the Utah Jazz.
Yeah, this is definitely an under that I would have a little more comfort with than the Joe Ingles one, where I like agree on its face that Joe Ingles getting less minutes makes him a little bit less likely to get where you want to get. But thinking about it from a tournament perspective, I should have that confidence in Ingles just not being able to play enough minutes. Like, he's still playing probably mid-20s at least. And I think there's some pathways for him to get even more than that, depending on how the matchup looks and whether you need Royce O'Neal's defense out there more than you need Ingles' offense. But this one with Mitchell, I agree, is a very strong under. And to me, I'd be more inclined to take this one as one of my higher points level unders on No House Advantage today, because because it's not quite at the level of some of the Knicks players ones where we have unders for Reggie Bullock, for Alec Burks being much higher. And Bojan Bogdanovic seems like it's an even more extreme case there, but Donovan Mitchell coming in, the minutes aren't going to be secure. He and his teammates all had to fight and or politic and or just post a weird social media message to get him back in the mix, or at least have the medical team treat him the way that they wanted him to be treated. I don't know what's going on there, but there's enough bad things blowing where it kind of reminds me of, Eric, what you were talking about with Chris Paul, where Mitchell being back in, it just doesn't seem like the playing should be happening quite as much. So taking his under just seems kind of logical.
Yep, absolutely. And now we can go to Reggie Bullock here too. He's kind of the last guy to be looking at here on the board. I'll start for you. I think basically capitalizing on the under of Reggie Bullock is going to be a profitable thing. I would say the one guy that was surprising to see him get as much run as he did, we saw Emmanuel quickly play 21 minutes. And that's going to be directly cutting into a guy like Reggie Bullock here, who ends up in the starting lineup there. Only played 19 minutes, had 0 fouls, basically was ineffective. He didn't knock down any threes, and he could possibly see that run get extended if he were to go out, get out of the gate and play a little bit better. But it seemed like Tibbs kind of made the transition going to a little bit more quickly than what I expected. That was the really surprising thing. I added this to the bottom because I really thought that was a fascinating thing. And we know the kind of upside that Emmanuel quickly can provide. So if you're looking for a cheap dart today to kind of mix and match with your player pool, Emmanuel quickly is not going to project out well. I'm not going to say he's the Cameron Payne of today by any means whatsoever, but I like Emmanuel quickly, but that makes all of the unders look pretty darn good for Reggie Bullock. 18.5 points plus rebounds plus assists, or points is kind of what I was honing in on specifically. He can knock down some threes, but really looking like a solid under today on NHA.
Yeah, I think, and part of the reason I'm comfortable taking the under on NHA is I do think Bullock's kind of an interesting tournament option for the Knicks today because of the fact that the minutes are insecure and he could just shoot the lights out. Like we have seen him occasionally in the past, just hit a lot of threes, then he earns more court time because he's a competent defender. They did go to him, I think, in large part because he just wasn't the most effective offensively, and they were starting to get killed by the Hawks at the portion of the game where Bullock came out and then ended up not seeing a ton of run in the second quarter. So in the spot, to me, I think playing him on no house advantage just seems like a logical move, whereas playing Bullock on DFS, I think, take the under on no house advantage so you can play Bullock in DFS and make a little more sense of that. Let's keep going through the rest of the show here. We got to do a little good dog, bad dog. But first of all, let's give the shout out to No House Advantage, the full proper plug. It was our sponsor here on the show, and we appreciate it a bunch. If you play over there, you'll appreciate it too by using the promo code Awesemo, because they're giving you a deposit bonus of $20 for any new signups out there. So go play over there. It's basically a peer-to-peer prop betting format where you're playing in DFS style tournaments, but also just picking some of the prop bets like we talked about here. So we build around that Donovan Mitchell under today would be a good move, but whatever you do, play over at No House Advantage because it's a good site to play on. Easier to beat the tournaments on there than some of the other sites you're probably playing on for DFS. So go check them out. They want your business, and they're doing you a favor to get you the deposit bonus right now with that promo code Awesemo. But let's talk a little good dog, bad dog.
Oh, this is so sad. I was just thinking that we got to do some reads. This was a perfect opportunity. Puppet Eric could have dominated that read. I can't talk anymore. My vocal cords are shot after laughing so hard. It is unbelievable what you have done to me.
I am glad to hear that. No, and I hope you guys appreciate our antics. People out there, it seems like Anthony, the player, really digging in on some of the stuff from the slate. And have no fear. If you want that deep insight into what the NBA slate's going to look like, we have 2 more hours of content coming up on the channel with the NBA Deeper Dive, with the NBA Live Before Lock show. And today that is going to be on these shows. I believe we got Loughran and Adam back today, right? Let me just make sure I'm pulling this up. For some reason, of course, taking forever to load as I'm doing this live.
Yes, we do.
Loughran and Adam. And then we get Josh and Greg, 2 home run duos coming up next. So 2 guys you can get to. Unfortunately, none of this guy yet, but I guess I just got to get payroll going, and then maybe they'll put old Puppet Lindquist on some shows. We'll find out in the future. I shouldn't shrug when the puppet's talking, I think. So the only thing I'm learning is a ventriloquist.
This is going to take some getting used to.
Have no fear. We got 10 minutes left. And you know me and my bits, Eric. Sometimes they come out hot and heavy. Sometimes they disappear for weeks and then don't come back. It's
honestly, you can't give the people what they want every single time. You've kind of taken a back seat on the voice, and now you've basically dropped a nuke. And you have dropped an absolute nuke into the middle of the segments. Oh my Lord. This is going to be fun. I'm so excited to log off today and cry. This is fun.
Eric, I think you did intimate that you had a good dog you were viewing in mind. So tell me, who would be your good dog for today's slate?
So I think there are some good betting opportunities So yesterday I wasn't too high on making any kind of stands. Thank God I didn't bet the Clippers. My Lord, that would have been enjoyable. But I think good dog. I'm going to go towards Memphis. That line has moved all the way to 10 at some sports books. So if you take a look around over on Odd Chopper, it's already moved from 8 to 10, and I'm assuming that's because of the Donovan Mitchell news. But I really do like still kind of, if you're going to give me double digits for a playoff game against a team that just came out and ended up kind of asserting themselves, played very, very well. I think as a unit, they've had a little bit more cohesiveness together. There's so many unknowns I have for Donovan Mitchell. If he goes out and is off by whatever means, like this game could stay closer. So I think a good dog, 10 points. And then I'll give you my bad dog too. I'll just throw it in. I just think the Hawks are a bad dog. I'm going to be heavy on the New York Knickerbockers today. So I'm very high on that.
Yeah, I would say for me, I actually agree with your take on the good dog. I think there's some potential here for Memphis to seal this just because of getting Donovan Mitchell back in the mix. And it's not, to be clear, I'm not saying Mitchell's a bad player. I'm not saying it's a subtraction by addition like I did at points early in the year with LaMarcus Aldridge and the Spurs. But I do think it's a situation where you have to get a guy in who's so high usage, just coming off of an injury, who's going to dominate the ball for some amount of possessions. And for whatever it's worth, this Utah team has continued to fight without him. And they certainly, same thing for Mike Conley as well. He's been indoctrinated back in well enough. But now you have Conley coming in and has only played a handful of games with these guys back in the mix, then Mitchell coming back in. Like, it's perfect timing for the playoffs for them to sort of get where they need to. But I do think there's a possibility of a 1-game curve. So I am with you. Actually, I think Memphis a good dog to cover, and honestly kind of lives me as a money line bet. 366 money line on them, only a 21% implied probability to win. But I think at those odds, you're got a decent shot at a payoff here. And Memphis just one of those teams that continues to win in spots where you don't think they will. My bad dog on the day, I think, is going to be going to baseball. I think that the Nationals do have a really good day in terms of their results. The question I have for DFS with them is, can they get the home run production against a guy and Jeff Hoffman, who does for the most part keep the ball down? But that's something that, for DFS is the question for betting today. I just don't think Cincinnati comes in the spot and has a great situation for themselves. Joe Ross, not a good pitcher, but I think the Washington hitting, getting to full health, to me, to take the bet on them. And I think take Cincinnati as the bad dog on the slate. What else do we have here? We got a couple more segments. We got our make or break, and I haven't crunched yet, Eric. So I'm curious to hear who your make or break is, because yesterday I feel like your make or break was campaign, and that certainly did more making than breaking.
Yeah, that was a fun one. And I think if we're trying to get somebody off the board today, I'm not sure what Emmanuel Quickley's ownership is going to get to as we're looking at it here. I didn't pull it up. I made a couple lineups last night as I was screwing around, just because I knew how much Philadelphia exposure everybody was going to get. Yeah, Emmanuel Quickley's coming in at 16% on DK. That makes it difficult. He's more of a process of, you want Russell Westbrook and Joel Embiid to go for 70 plus each, and the only way to get them is to play somebody at 3,400 where Emmanuel Quickley can maybe get you 15, 20 there at 3,400. I was surprised to see him play 21 minutes. So I like the price tag. I don't like the ownership where that's coming in at, but if I had to pick a make or break, I think it's going to probably be, and I can't believe I'm about to say this name out loud because this is not what I was expecting out of my life, but I'm going to have a ton of Danny Green. I find it very difficult to get away from 4K on DraftKings and 4,100 Danny Green on this slate. Probably the only guy in that price range who's guaranteed to play right around 30 minutes so long as this game stays close. Has a 3-point upside, did go 3 for 4 from 3 against Washington. It's going to be a game with a lot of possessions. And if Ben Simmons is going to be hitting guys with opportunity, passing it around a little bit, Danny Green, Seth Curry, both of them interesting. But I think just taking the savings on Danny Green is kind of a necessity of this slate. That's why we see the ownership where it's at. So I hate the play. I absolutely hate it. I don't like it, but I feel like it's chalk I have to eat.
Yeah, I think that's a reasonable take to have. For me, it's going to be the other Sixers. Like, I'm sure we'll get a good amount of Danny Green, but I think there's some ways, like we talked about, playing the Knicks big men is one way to maybe save some salary and get there. Taking some stabs on just spreading around ownership on lower projected guys like we have seen hit recently is another approach for the value. But the guys I'm not going to be able to get away from, I think, are Ben Simmons and Tobias Harris. For me, certainly with the chalk, I obviously have my good pal Puppet Lindquist here, who is no stranger to chalk himself, and he's going to make serious faces while I continue to talk here. Hopefully, maybe nodding if I could figure out how to do that. But I think the main thing really for me with the Sixers is there's just no way to get away from these guys. There's simply no way at all to move away from guys like Ben Simmons and Tobias Harris at their price points. They look like fantastic plays. And to me, that's the main thing here, where I don't care about the ownership. I'm going to be there heavy, and we're going to hope that they work out.
Jeff Dunham himself reincarnated on stream.
Yeah,
Oh,
I don't know
boy.
if Jeff Dunham has he aged well. Has he been canceled at some point? Like some of those characters, maybe.
Yeah,
Not aged.
Ahmed the terrorist. Yeah, probably. I'm not gonna lie. That one's probably not coming back anytime soon, if I had to guess. But
who knows?
either way,
If you had to
dude.
guess.
Honestly, I didn't know what to expect. You said that there was a surprise in store. This surpassed all my expectations. 1, I'm very happy that the puppet has blue eyes. It's 2, he's got a polo on. 3, now I don't feel as ridiculous when you just pull a voice out randomly, because now there's actually like something, but now we have to learn how to, like, you have to learn to not talk. You have to do the ventriloquist thing where you have to like not be talking simultaneously, right?
That's definitely the difficult part of ventriloquism. The talking part is really, our producer Jordan Klein recommended maybe I move my mouth behind the pop filter so then you can't tell it all, but I do feel like that is cheating the process, so I would agree. Either way though, let's close out the show with our fade of the day. Very impossible for me to do. They're all great players, that much is for sure, but my fade of the day is going to be Kayla's internet connection, bad play, don't go back there, no way that one works out, lock it, put it in the box.
Oh my God.
You got a fade of the day here?
No, I don't have any fade. Maybe every Utah Jazz player besides Rudy Gobert and a sprinkle of Royce O'Neal. I'll have none of them. Oh.
Yeah, I think that's a reasonable fade to have. Thankfully, guys, if you are looking for the serious content, it is coming up for you right next. NBA Deeper Dive, NBA Live Before Lock, 2 great duos, Loughran and Adam, Josh and Greg, coming up right after this one. Follow at Eric Lindquist, follow at Chris Spags, follow at Puppet Lindquist, which is not an account that exists, but I probably should have registered it just in case. We appreciate you guys. Have a great day. And of course, good luck.
fix my chair. All right, go ahead. What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Awesemo.com NBA Deeper Dive presented by Monkey Knife Fight. I'm Dave Loughran. Along with me for the ride back from Arizona, sitting in on a three-game show here today, Adam Scherer at ShipMyMoney DFS. You can find me on Twitter at Laffy_D. What's going on, man? You feeling refreshed back from vacation?
Yeah, it was nice, like a forced break from DFS. I played MMA on Saturday because I was able to register before I left on Friday, but no DFS in Arizona, so kind of was forced to get away from it. And it was a nice break, but excited to be back.
It's not really forced if you have a VPN, though, right?
Yeah, I mean, like I could have, I guess.
You kind of just needed the respite to get away for a little bit.
Yeah, I would have at least had to jump through some hoops, risk pissing off Draftkings. It was enough of a hoop that it was just like, yeah, I just won't play for a few days.
Yeah, I'm not recommending, nor am I suggesting that, which would be the same thing. I'm just saying, like, if you wanted to, you could.
If there had been some like crazy value tournament that I really wanted to play, I would have.
You might have done it, but yeah, look, all I'm saying is we're happy to have you guys with us. We're happy to get into this slate. The crazy thing, and you haven't been around for the past couple of days, but I know writing the NBA Deep Dive, which is totally free over at Awesemo.com every single day of the week. You don't need an account or anything for that. You can check it out right on the homepage. In doing so, even if you weren't paying super close attention, which I'm sure you still were perusing the box scores and watching some of these games, the past few days, just totally different slates from Monday to Tuesday, and then again today to on Wednesday. Like yesterday, you had a ton of top tier players. Today, not so much. It's Westbrook, Embiid, and then falls off to guys like Randall and Beal. And then a few days, you've actually had some odd value where Maxi Kleber's minimum salary, Robert Williams is cheap, and just a lot of guys that were actually less expensive than they should be. Draftkings priced down a ton of players. What do you make of today's slate, looking at it at first glance with 3 games?
Yeah, kind of a weird one. Like, as far as value goes, there's a couple of guys that are really cheap that you can look to that you're not going to feel good about, but guys like Quickly and Gibson that are probably a little bit cheaper than they should be, but certainly, still capable of scoring like single digit points. But then at the top, you have Westbrook and Embiid that both should score tons of points tonight. You have Randall, you have Beal, you have Donovan Mitchell coming back. So and the center position is actually pretty deep. So there's a lot of stuff to pay for tonight. And I think it's going to sort of force you onto some plays that make you uncomfortable, whether it's those Knicks guys I mentioned, whether it's Danny Green, Seth Curry. I mean, you're going to have to kind of put some ugly value in to be able to get up to some of these, 8K plus or 9K plus guys. But I do think, there's a lot of very good plays, and it's nice with the playoffs. You don't have the dirt cheap 3K value that you get at the end of the season, but you also can feel a little bit more comfortable about the way rotations are going to look, and that you're not going to get, something too bizarre happening that kills your lineups as far as the value guys go.
AFC Angelo says, he says, Laffy, keep fighting the good fight, man. Loved hearing you talk about the importance of books and storing knowledge earlier with Josh. Yeah, on the strategy show today, Adam, Josh advocated for burning all of the books in the country.
Sounds like something that someone with Josh's intelligence level would recommend.
Burning all books because you can store them on a Kindle. So yeah, here we are.
What was the like benefit of burning them? It just, you have more space.
Once he realized how egregious he was, he transitioned to it saves trees, but we all know that's not true.
Once the tree is a book, it doesn't go back to being a tree.
Of course, I guess he was talking to about the, the not producing any new books. But
okay,
what I said is, I'm all about technology. I use it every single day, way more than I should. But I'm a purist when it comes to books. Like I still enjoy reading an actual physical book, and I enjoy having them, because I think it's important. That's all.
Yeah, I can't do audiobooks. I don't read nearly as much as I should, but give me an actual book over like an audiobook.
Josh is obviously in chat here. Maybe I didn't get his words perfectly accurate, but I don't know. I think that was a solid job of paraphrasing what's going on here. Hey, hit that thumbs up. We're at 156 jumping in here. Let's pump that at least to 200. We got around 900 people watching to get off to a good start. And yeah, Thomas, exactly. That's exactly what I'm saying, man. We shouldn't be advocating that nonsense. Let's get us to 200 likes. Subscribe to the channel too. We're making that push towards 60K, continuing to grow here as a channel. The more we do, the more free content we can put out. Hopefully you guys enjoy it all the way through, from basketball to baseball to MMA, PGA, everything we put out here on the site. And we appreciate you for sticking with us every single day of the week, watching this content, because without you, this ain't happening. All right, let's jump into it. You already talked about where you're at on this slate, and we can dive into that a little bit more as we go on. But I will say one thing. I was making some lineups earlier today. I was even making a few on Yahoo and just trying to get a feel for all three sites. And I kept landing on spots where I had like 6 players from Washington, Philly.
Yeah, and I think so. It makes sense because we know that Washington has a couple of guys in Westbrook and Beal that, are just they're 2 of the top projected players on the slate. They're playing huge minutes, that they are who they are. But then you also get some value there where like Rui's not a very good fantasy option, but he's playing a bunch of minutes. Davis Bertans, same kind of thing. And then, if you want to roll the dice on a center, so like there's plenty of guys from Washington. But then on the Philly side, the thing with the playoffs that you have to keep in mind when you think about games and think about these plays is like during the regular season, there's always a bunch of teams that are in a good spot, or at least a few teams that are in a good spot. When you get to the playoffs, most of these teams are good defensively. And on this slate in particular, most of them are pretty slow and most of them are pretty good defensively. And then you have the Wizards. So the Sixers just far and away have the best matchup here. On DraftKings, the pricing is really pretty cheap as well. But it just makes it so like the players on the Sixers are just clearly in the best spot of any team. So I think it makes sense to just be getting to a lot of this game.
Yeah, not to mention on Yahoo, like Seth Curry is $11. The minimum is 10, right? Just like some really crazy pricing that just kind of forces you into doing that. Davis Bertans is minimum salary. So you're naturally just going to end up in spots like that. In a game that has by far the highest total on the slate, you're looking at 228.5. Sixers laying 8 points at home. But as we saw last game, we can talk about the Embiid foul trouble. Blowouts have been a thing early on in the play-in games and in this first round. Adam, like we've seen a number of them that have really affected the DFS landscape and what's happened with lineups. Could this game blow out? Yeah, I think so. But even if it does, I still see Scott Brooks giving, Westbrook probably gets like 37 instead of 42 minutes, so I don't think it's as big of an issue as it might be with some other teams that run their starters for 35, 36 in close games instead of 40 to 42.
Yeah, it goes back to what we talk about a lot with blowouts, how unless the game is just, crazy out of control, especially in the playoffs, like it would have to be, like a 30-point game after 3 for Brooks to consider just not bringing his guys back. Like if it's a 22-point game, they're at least going to start the 4th. But if Westbrook's going to play 40 to 42 minutes in a competitive game, if he loses 6 minutes due to a blowout, which is a pretty nice chunk of minutes to lose, he's still playing like as many minutes as Trae Young is projected for.
For sure. And if we get any news throughout the show, or if we're waiting on any news, which we really shouldn't be, outside of Nerlens Noel, if that drops during Live Before Lock, be sure to stick around right after this. You've got Greg Ehrenberg and the book burner Josh Engelman coming up straight after this, taking you all the way up till 7 o'clock Eastern time. So we got NBA for the next 2 hours here for this 3-game slate. Let's jump into Washington first. Thank you for the super chat. Roll one crazy Mex said took first in a winner take all because of Eric's gut feeling on Cameron Payne. Thanks a lot. Yeah, that was a great call by Eric. Wasn't really a gut feeling. It was if Chris Paul isn't healthy, and he clearly wasn't, then Cameron Payne could get some additional run, and that's exactly what happened. And he produced in those minutes as well. All right, let's kick it off with Russell Westbrook. You're paying a premium for him on a slate like this. I wouldn't say he's overpriced. 11.6 on Fanduel, 11.4 on DraftKings. Where do we start with Westbrook? Is he somebody that on a 3-gamer against a team like Philly that has a top defense for sure, and is a good enough rebounding team? They've limited opposing teams to bottom 7 rebounding rate this season. Do you think maybe this is a spot where Westbrook could once again give us underwhelming per minute totals?
Yes and no. So, I think it is a tough matchup. We know the Sixers, they rebound well, they defend well, they can certainly pack the paint and keep Westbrook, make Westbrook, shoot jump shots, which he's not very good at. I still think he's pretty easily the top projected scorer on the slate, just because he's most likely to lead the slate in minutes. He's still a very good fantasy producer. I mean, he's around 1.6 DraftKings points per minute since the All-Star break. Even if you take some of that away for Philly, you're not going to get low enough for him not to really be the top projected player on the slate. But he's also the most expensive. And because the value, once you get to the playoffs, you don't get quite as many cheap guys or nearly as many cheap guys that are going to look really good. You're actually taking risks to get Westbrook into your lineup, whereas you can save some money, go to some other very high upside guys, whether that's Embiid, Randall, Beal, Young, Valanciunas. There's a lot of guys that they don't give you necessarily Westbrook's ceiling, but they certainly can score within a couple points of Westbrook if he has a average game at a much cheaper price point. So I think we're back to Westbrook not being like someone that you have to play, not being the first guy in your lineup, not being, we're not at the stage where he's 80% owned and you're just looking and going, oh, well, thanks for paying the rake to the other 20%, because, you do actually still have to make some decisions at this point. All that being said, if you get Westbrook into your lineup and you like the other guys there, he's still a great play because he's likely to play north of 40 minutes. He's one of the best per minute producers on the slate. And, he's Russell Westbrook.
I can't say that I'm someone that looks at past performance against certain teams, but Bradley Beal is someone, and it's funny because I know you watch a lot of Wizards games. I watch a lot of Sixers games. I try and watch as many games around the league as I can, particularly in the playoffs, but there's no doubt I'm catching more of the Sixers than any other team. I would assume it's the same with you and the Wizards, right? He has had some very, very good games against the 76ers, like some really, really good games against the 76ers. If I recall correctly, I'm pretty sure he had like a 75-80 DraftKings point game earlier this season where he dropped 60 real points on them, and they still took the L. But actually, look at this. So he's only played against them a couple times this season, but he's had some big games, and I can't help but look back and think, not even look back, look forward to today's game and see Bradley Beal at a price point that I think it's a very, very reasonable price point on Beal, even if he isn't the same guy that you're talking in terms of peripherals. I did love to see that in this game on Sunday, he had 10 and 6 for 10 rebounds, 6 assists, and 33 points across 41 minutes. The volume's going to be there. The usage is going to be there. If he can maintain even decent peripherals, you could get a huge game from Beal at a big discount from Westbrook, even though they're totally different players.
Yeah, without a doubt. And I think the salaries, the really big deal there. And, As far as the matchup with Philly, like you're not, I mentioned this in the deep dive, he's averaged 1.4 DraftKings points per minute in the 4 games, including the game 1 of this series that he's played against them this year. You're not looking at that saying, the Sixers are a great matchup for Bradley Beal. He's going to produce at an above average rate, but it does at least make you feel good that he's had success in this matchup already. He had one game where he only had like 22 fantasy points in 29 minutes. But other than that, he's had 3 good games, including the one you mentioned where he had 60 actual points. They're a very good defensive team, but he has still been able to score against them, which is, really good to see. And it makes you feel, you at least feel better about him going into this game than you would if they had just kept the ball out of his hands and lowered his usage rate and kept him from scoring in all these games. So I still think the price point is pretty good on him, especially 8,800 on DraftKings. He played 40 minutes last game, which was really good to see since we know he's been dealing with that hamstring injury since the end of the regular season. It seems like, he still hasn't had that act up on him and the minutes should be there. So I do think Beal is a very good option here. And, again, we're back to the pricing, making it's reasonable to just say, I'll take the savings. I'll take Bradley Beal. I'll take the 45, 50 DraftKings points I'm probably going to get from him. Hope Westbrook doesn't go for 75, and I'll be in a good spot.
That's kind of where I'm at too. And I think while Westbrook can go for 75 against anyone, it's funny. I've actually been waiting to ask you this question. I thought you'd be a perfect person for the job, given that you have solid analysis, but also that you are someone that closely tracks the Wizards and knows them better than all of us. How much do you think Westbrook, actually something Josh and I talked about in terms of minutes, because he's already playing 40 plus minutes a night in the regular season. How much do you think Westbrook suffers in the postseason, if at all? Or do you think we would continue to see this same type of electric, monstrous, huge triple-double production from him going into spots against Philly and really good teams that actually can focus on locking guys down and actually can dominate the boards and stuff?
Yeah, so I think that he can struggle in the sense where, not to compare him to Giannis, but they have the same massive flaw in their games. if teams want to really stop Westbrook, they can. I'm not sure that forcing Bradley Beal to beat you as opposed to Westbrook is really the way the teams are going to want to go. But if they want to, they can. And that's certainly, they can make it really tough for Westbrook to score because, you pack the paint, you make him give the ball to someone else. And especially if like Bertans is missing shots, it can get pretty ugly for the Wizards. So they certainly can do that. And you mentioned it with the rebounding, the Sixers being a good rebounding team. In the 4 times he's played the Sixers this year, he only has double-digit rebounds once, which, again, you're not looking at that and saying that it's guaranteed to happen again, or that's the case going forward. But it's pretty weird when Westbrook has played a team 4 times and has only gotten double-digit rebounds once. And again, that's the kind of thing too, where, teams just play harder and they play their best players more minutes in the postseason. So whereas during the regular season, maybe Westbrook is grabbing a bunch of rebounds because he's out there against second unit teams that, aren't as good. Now he's out there just playing more minutes against Joel Embiid. So it does make a difference. I don't expect Westbrook to produce in the postseason at the same fantasy rate that he does during the regular season. And the other thing to keep in mind is not from a real basketball standpoint, but from a fantasy standpoint, when you're talking about Westbrook, during the regular season, when you were getting 38, 39 minutes from Westbrook, compared to the other very good per minute fantasy producers, he was often playing 5-6 minutes more than them because it was the regular season and they just weren't playing that many minutes. Now in the postseason, he's still probably going to play more minutes, but you're going to get more run from these other guys, from Embiid, from Trae Young, from Valanciunas, from all these other guys that still produce like 1.4 fantasy points per minute. So the gap isn't quite as big in terms of projection as it would be during the regular season.
All right, good call. I'm with you though. Now, when it comes to guys like Davis Bertans, this is where things get fun. And I say that.
No, it doesn't.
Without any sincerity. Yeah, exactly. I mean fun in terms of trying to analyze it, which is actually the very opposite of fun. Because you're talking about guys like Rui Hachimura, who played 36 minutes yesterday. But, man, this guy has just been outright bad on a per-minute basis. And Davis Bertans, like, sure, you kind of know what you're getting from him, which is having zero idea what you're going to get from it. Like going into this, the only thing predictable about Davis Bertans is he's entirely unpredictable. He could give you legitimately 6 fantasy. He had 5 fantasy points in 33 minutes in that play-in game against Boston. Need I say any more than that? Or he could go 8 for 10 from 3 and actually have a really solid game. It's just, you don't know. You either play him and hope that he goes off from beyond the arc and he's knocking down his shots, or you don't play him and you hope that he goes for 5 fantasy points in 30 minutes again.
Yeah, I mean, we talk about basketball being like more projectable than a sport like football. Bertans is like the closest thing you're going to get in NBA DFS to the like number
Marquise
3.
Brown.
Yeah, or I was going to say like the number 3 deep threat that's going to get like 3 targets in a game, but if he houses one at 3K, right, you need him.
Pretty much
like,
Marquise Brown, even though he's the number one.
Even though he's the number one, same thing, yeah.
3 targets per game.
Bertans is going to go out there. He's going to shoot threes. He's not really going to rebound. He's definitely not going to get assists. He's not going to do anything, but he's going to shoot threes, and he's cheap, and he's theoretically a very good 3-point shooter. So he has the potential to just pick up, 30 DraftKings points on 3-pointers. It's not the most likely outcome, but he's cheap enough where, it's certainly a risk that you can be willing to take, but the floor is just non-existent because he doesn't get those peripherals. And if he's not making his threes, he's just not going to score fantasy points. So he's certainly a perfectly fine play, but he's another just example of what I was saying at the top of the show, where there are cheap guys that you can put in your lineup and they make sense, but you're not going to feel good about them because you can just so easily see how they score, 10, 12, 15 fantasy points. And Rui's kind of the same thing, just like a little bit better version because of the minutes. But both of these guys in the games that they've played since the All-Star break with Westbrook and Beal active, and I say since the All-Star breaks, that's where Westbrook really turned things on and started to take over. They've both averaged 3/4 of a fantasy point per minute. Rui, you saw play 36 minutes last game. He is someone I expect to play big minutes and to get more minutes on average than Bertans. They really need one or both of these guys to step up for them to have a chance in this series. But it's basically Rui's very similar to Bertans as far as, he's more expensive. He projects higher because of the minutes, but he's a 3/4 fantasy point per minute guy. And for him to really have a big game, he's going to need to shoot better than normal from 3, or just take on a bigger scoring role in general, or have some extra rebounds bounce to him. So, both of these guys, I think that they're good point per dollar values given what is available on this slate, but you're just not going to feel good about putting them in your lineup.
All right. I'm with you. Hey, did you know, by the way, that the Sixers, somebody mentioned this in chat, and it was a good point. I forgot to mention it earlier. The Sixers are allowing the 3rd highest 3-point percentage. Oh, you know what? Wrong. I didn't filter by the postseason. I was going to say that there's no way that's right. Because they allow 40. There's no way the Sixers are allowing the third highest 3-point percentage in the regular season. Actually, they're allowing the ninth lowest 3-point percentage. But I've said this many times over. While the Sixers are a good defense, you have a lot of games where they'll win, and they might even win in blowout fashion, but one individual player goes and does some seriously heavy lifting against them and puts up huge numbers. Doc Rivers the other day, when asked by a reporter, so do you game plan sometimes to let one guy essentially do whatever he wants while the rest of the team you shut down? And he said, yeah, but you can't really do that against Washington when you have Westbrook and Beal and then everybody else. Like, you want to just shut down those two, because if you shut both of them down, there's nothing else on this team to hurt you.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I'm sure he would love to make Rui Hachimura beat them.
Exactly. Like, there's other teams that have a star, but then they have a lot of other really solid options. Maybe you shut everyone else down and kind of let the star do some work, but not enough to beat you. In a case like this, you'd love to let Ish Smith and Rui put in some work here.
Yeah,
anybody
to
else
that point, though, it goes back to what you were saying earlier. If they're going to look, though, if they're going to look at Beal and Westbrook, and realistically, which one can they do the most to just take out of the game? Westbrook is going to be a lot easier to just game plan out of this game.
Yes. Yeah, of course. And that's why I think he's the type of guy that can do anything. You know, he's superhuman out there from a fantasy standpoint, but I do look at him a little bit different in the postseason. And I like Beal a lot tonight. Anybody else you want to hit on from Washington?
Yeah, I mean, I got to touch on the center position, I guess, just because it's a 3-game slate. It's always, a crapshoot with Scott Brooks and what he's going to do. The one thing that I'm looking at sort of as a tiebreaker here, and you can't even really take a whole lot out of the rotation last game because at various points, all of these guys were in foul trouble. But the one thing that I did take away from the rotation last game was Daniel Gafford subbed in after Alex Len. So Gafford was the second guy in. Robin Lopez only played about 3 minutes in the first half, and that was after Gafford picked up a couple of fouls. Then he subbed back in the third quarter, played a nice stretch into the fourth. But again, that was after Gafford picked up fouls number 3 and 4. So also, if you look at individual post-up defense for the Wizards centers this year, Lopez has been the worst out of the 3. He's a good rim protector, but he doesn't defend post-ups well, and we know that Embiid can live there. So foul trouble will make it. So I think all 3 centers play 12 to 20 minutes. But I think in a perfect world, Brooks would be going more to Len and Gafford today than Lopez. So I think that it means $4,100 Gafford does offer tournament upside if he can somehow stay on the floor and not foul Embiid. We know the type of ceiling he has. And $3,100 Len, we saw him do a pretty decent job against Domantas Sabonis in the play-in game. We saw him get 16 minutes again last game. At $3,100, if he gets 15 or 16 minutes, he reasonably can beat someone like Taj Gibson, who's getting a bunch of ownership.
Jordan, can you hear that rain? No? Okay, good. Monsters.
Like here.
Huge. What'd you say?
It looks like it's about to start pouring at my
it's
house too.
Pouring here right now. Insane amount of rain. So as long as you can't hear it, we're good to go. Okay, Philadelphia side. And for anyone wondering why we're spending so much time on this game, it's because this game's pretty important, and I'm pretty sure we should spend a lot of time on this game, Philadelphia included. And then we'll get through each of the last 2 quite easily as well and make sure we hit on everything necessary. Also, we got free content on the site today. If you want to check it out, it's free. Well, it's premium, but today it's free. We rotate through it. So if anyone that's not a premium sub wants to check it out, the NBA player projections are free today. MLB main slate ownership projections, PGA golfer projections, and NHL player projections. So basically projections for all sports and ownership projections for baseball. And if you want to check out everything we have, ownership, player projections, the top stack tool, boom or bust tool, the lineup builder, fantasy cruncher add-on, all of that stuff outside of fantasy cruncher, all of that built by the #1 ranked DFS player in the world, Awesemo, Alex Baker himself, and used by him. It's an important thing to note there. Used to win a ton of money playing DFS. And as well as, you see our Hall of Fame page, you see our Hall of Fame Twitter and the segment that we do. A lot of Awesemo avatars up there every day. It's a great community. We'd love to have you be a part of it. If you want to check it out, go to awesemo.com/join. Check out the weekly, monthly, annual, single sport, all sport. Doesn't matter. Whatever you're looking to do, whatever your budget is or your style of play. And when you do sign up, if you decide to hop on over and give us a shot, jump into our premium Slack chat, and you can hop into all channels, explore all the channels. There's a ton of different stuff, including the premium office hours where you got pros at Awesemo answering your questions, helping you better your game. So we got something from top to bottom for DFS, every single sport too. Golf, NASCAR, UFC, football, hockey, basketball, baseball, everything. Awesemo.com/join. But if you're not ready, check out the free content we got going on over there today at awesemo.com. All right. So with Philadelphia, Joel Embiid got into some early foul trouble, only played around 11 minutes, less than 11 in the first half. I don't see that being the case again in this spot. 30 minutes, 29 and a half minutes, still scored 30 actual points, Adam. It just feels like a matchup where if he gets his full allotment of minutes, Joel Embiid is going to absolutely dominate down low. And I wouldn't be surprised if all three centers, if they get into the game for Washington, get into some foul trouble in some form or fashion.
Yeah, he could foul out this entire front court. You could be getting Rui at center because there's 18 combined fouls on Lopez, Len, and Gafford. They just don't have an answer here. I mean, all that they conceivably can do is just double him as soon as he touches the ball, front him so he can't get the ball. But that comes with its own issues when you have Danny Green and Seth Curry and Tobias Harris on the floor. In a perfect world, they're forcing Ben Simmons to shoot, but I don't really know how you do that when you have to use at least two guys on Embiid, and then you still have three other guys that are going to shoot ahead of Ben Simmons. So there's no real answer for the Wizards to make it so Embiid doesn't have a big game. You saw the game he had in those 30 minutes last time with 30 actual points. Pretty disappointing rebounding game and peripheral game for him in those minutes. But I don't expect him to have an issue there going forward either. So I think Embiid clearly one of the top pay up guys. I think he's the second highest projected guy on the slate behind Russell Westbrook. Really, really like Embiid. Don't have, anything at all negative to say about him.
Yep. I don't really think there's anything else. I have a question for you though. Now, teams do sell out to stop Embiid. We've seen this many, many times. I'm not saying Scott Brooks in Washington by any stretch has the personnel to do it, but if they really try to limit Joel Embiid early, is there any merit to fading Embiid in lineups, maybe single entry 3 max, and going with like a Seth Curry, Tobias Harris, Ben Simmons, Sixers onslaught that doesn't include Joel Embiid? Just thinking about that earlier today is maybe some different ways to work around this if Embiid doesn't have a spectacular game, because in this matchup, one or more are usually going to on the Sixers if he doesn't.
Yeah, and I think that's viable, for the reason that you said. Like, we could just see the Wizards sell out to stop Embiid, but also the pricing is just favorable enough where, you could easily just get a bunch of fantasy points from like Simmons, Harris, Curry, and not need Embiid. The one thing that I thought was interesting, because, I kind of like half watched this game when I was in Arizona, the first game, and I knew Harris's stat line. I saw Harris's stat line. So my assumption was that the Wizards kind of had been selling out on Embiid, and that's why you got 29 field goal attempts from Tobias Harris, because that is something that, like, coming into the series, I thought was in the realm of possibilities, was that you would just see Harris or someone like that blow up. 19 of his 29 field goal attempts came with Joel Embiid on the bench. So on the one hand, I think you probably are going to see people kind of gravitate towards Tobias Harris a little bit too much with that same line of thinking that the Wizards forced Harris into a big game. But when you come back to the price point, $7,400 on Fanduel, $7K on Draftkings, Tobias Harris can just play his normal role for 37, 38 minutes, and he's still really undervalued. Then you factor in that there is still some chance that the Sixers game plan or the Wizards game plan does force more shots to Harris again, even without Embiid in foul trouble. And Harris still looks like a great value. Simmons, we know, isn't going to take shots unless, if Simmons is the one that has to take shots, that bodes really well for the Wizards. It's probably not going to be Simmons, but he's still going to do enough to where he's 7,300 against the Wizards. He looks great. And then Seth Curry and Danny Green, I think, are the guys that, realistically, the Wizards, maybe they could get the ball out of Embiid's hands. They would probably like it not to go right to Tobias Harris, but you're not really going to be able to do much, as far as Seth Curry getting open looks or Danny Green getting open looks. Like, as good as they are, I'm sure the Wizards would live with them being the ones to beat them. So I think that you could definitely kind of just see like spike games from one of those guys.
Okay. Yeah, I think we could too. Who outside of Embiid do you like the most for Philly tonight?
Yeah, I mean, Simmons and Harris would be the ones I like the most. I know Eric said it on the show before us, and I agree completely. The 4K price tag on Danny Green on DraftKings, 4,100 on FanDuel. It's just going to be tough to get away from, I think. Not that you feel good about it. It's still Danny Green, but I mean, he played 31 minutes. Again, it's a spot where you certainly could see him get a couple more opportunities because the Wizards would rather him have the ball than Harris or Embiid. You could certainly see some defensive stats against the turnover-prone Westbrook. He's just at a price point and in this matchup that I think it looks like a really good salary.
Okay. And like I said, on Yahoo, there is a really nice price on a couple of these Philadelphia 76ers. One of them being Seth Curry. He is at $11 on a $10 minimum salary structure. That's pretty insane. Danny Green's 15. So like, I do not think that Seth Curry should be that much cheaper than Danny.
No, definitely not. I mean, if they're the same price, or in that case, Curry's cheaper, I would rather have Curry. He's just the better shooter.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, basically, like if you go back and like if you watched game one, you can just very easily get a stretch from either Curry or Green, like Seth Curry went on to start the second half, where the Wizards just started leaving him open, and Seth Curry is just one of the best 3-point shooters in the league. He's just knocking down wide open threes. He scored 11 points in the third quarter. You didn't get a run like that for Danny Green in that game, but you certainly can, and that's kind of the point with how cheap they are. You know, Green a little bit cheaper on DraftKings, Curry cheaper on Yahoo, but those guys are going to be in a position in this series where, like, if Washington actually manages to execute defensively, it's going to give open looks to Seth Curry and Danny Green, basically.
That's what I'm expecting too. So I have no problem rostering a lot of players from this game, specifically on the Philadelphia side, but Beal, Westbrook, I'm going to be getting to Bertans just because, you know, the price lends to him being a good play. You don't get a lot of sub 4K guys that can play, you know, close to 30 minutes. So, you know, not to backtrack and go back to Washington, but just in general, Adam, like this game has the best overall fantasy atmosphere and is the conditions for a huge game. There are also just some guys that are priced at a point that we're probably going to need to get to. Now, I'm going to ask you about one more guy here, and then I'll let you close out Philly with anything else you have. George Hill played 18 minutes in that first game against Washington. As far as backup point guards go, George Hill really isn't that bad. Is there anything here, and maybe if it blows out, he gets some additional run, but is there anything here that suggests George Hill could be viable today as a low-owned, low-exposure type guy?
I wouldn't say viable as far as like someone I think is really getting into lineups. I would say he's someone where if you're playing, 150 lineups or something, we already know that roster construction where you're trying to pay up for some of these guys is going to force you towards, Taj Gibson, Emmanuel Quickley. George Hill's going to beat Emmanuel Quickley enough of the time that, you certainly could make that pivot. But if you're playing like one lineup, or you're just trying to decide where to go, and you're not playing 150, I think you just play like Quickley or Gibson over Hill.
Anything else on Philly?
No.
All right. Let's talk about Atlanta and New York then. First game was actually really good. Trae Young got that game winner as time almost expired, played 35 minutes, shot 11 for 23. They got the W, 2-point win. I thought we were going to overtime there, but one of the best games we've seen from Trae in a while. They are coming into New York at Madison Square Garden, 2-point dogs, 213 total against a good Knicks defense that plays in large part at a crawling pace. So let's start with Trae, start with this backcourt and work our way up to Clint Capella.
Still pretty favorable pricing, I think, on Trae. He averaged about 34 minutes per game in the regular season. You would assume he plays more in the postseason, but again, he only played 1 minute more in that first game than he averaged in the regular season. But, even if you're going to get 35, 36 minutes from Young, he's a good enough player at a favorable enough price point that I do think he's a decent option. Like, I'd rather go to an $8,800 Bradley Beal than an $8,500 Trae Young, but I don't think, it's crazy to disagree there. It's a tough matchup for Young. It's a tough matchup for Beal. I think Beal, plays a few more minutes, and that's the tiebreaker. But, Trae Young, certainly gives you a high ceiling here. You should get 34 to 36 minutes from Bogdanović as well. I think it's pretty tough to get to him with any sort of frequency, on this particular slate. One thing we saw, though, going to the front court. Clint Capella, John Collins, both played big minutes in that game. And this season, the biggest knock on them has been that you can't expect them to play more than like 30 minutes in a game. Capella, a very good fantasy producer, around 1.4 DraftKings points per minute. If you're going to get 34, 35 minutes from him in the postseason, he's underpriced at 7,800. John Collins, not the same sort of production, but still greater than 1 fantasy point per minute. If you're going to get 35 minutes from him at 6,500, that's a pretty high upside play as well.
Oh man, I'm thinking as I look at some of these lesser priced options in the backcourt and not just in the backcourt, but some of the wing players, some of these swingmen that you have on Atlanta. Ownership here, I can't imagine, especially in this matchup against the Knicks, is going to be heavy at all. And really, when you think about it, Atlanta's getting considerably lower ownership than most teams because or even on a 3-game slate, this is pretty low. Only one guy above 20% right now, with where we have projected. Any thoughts on Hunter and Herter and anyone else you haven't mentioned in here, given their current ownership?
I'll mention Gallinari here. I think he's interesting in tournaments because he only played 23 and a half minutes in game 1. But one thing that I think is always really interesting to think about when you get into these playoff series and playoff DFS slates is like, if just one thing changed in this game that didn't happen last game, how would that change, or how would that likely change the rotation? Because people are very often going to just look at game 1 and say that's going to happen in game 2. The Hawks, this was a competitive game. The Hawks were up most of the game. And then, in the fourth quarter it was competitive. What happens if the Hawks are down like 8 in the fourth quarter? Is DeAndre Hunter subbing back in to play his final stint, or is that going to Gallinari? We saw Gallinari close the first half. Herter closed as well. Capella actually was not on the floor as they went small. But if they need scoring, in games they need scoring, I think instead of getting 23 or 24 minutes, you might get 28 minutes from Gallinari somewhere in there. And so, it's not a guarantee. It's still a tough matchup. It's still, a lot of volatility there. But I think that Gallinari does have a path to just play more minutes than he did last game if we get a slightly different game flow tonight. So that does make him kind of interesting in tournaments.
Okay. Talk to me about John Collins. Price point that's pretty affordable everywhere, but it's really reflective of what we've gotten from him most nights anyway. I think he's a relatively fine price, but John Collins also just hasn't been particularly good. He's getting a little bit of ownership, around 19% on DraftKings. I think that's reasonable at 6,500. On Fanduel, where he's 7,000, he's getting around 25%. You got to play 2 power forwards, of course. John Collins against the Knicks. Anything there for you at all today?
I think the price point's about where it should be. I think that if we were still expecting him to play around 30 minutes, he would be overpriced. Since you're getting 34, 35, he does have a ceiling. One thing that's nice too is that Okongwu basically isn't in the rotation. He played about 2 minutes and change last game. So you're getting some backup center minutes for Collins. That's, more valuable for him. But overall, I'm just double checking that. But he was playing without Capella on the floor last game. So those are more valuable minutes. But overall this year in games with Capella and Young, Collins averaged 1.08 DraftKings points per minute. You knock that down a little bit for a playoff game against the Knicks. Assume he gets around the fantasy point per minute, plays 34, 35 minutes. You're expecting 34, 35 fantasy points at 6,500, which is fine, but it's not something that's going to end up being one of the highest owned guys on the slate.
Okay. Yeah. His rebound rate's down almost 3% from last year. His defensive rebounds rate's down 4%. Pretty much everything down across the board. Usage is similar, but aside from that, he's even blocking shots at a lesser clip because he played a lot at the 5 before, and now you've got guys like Clint Capella that's one of the best shot blocking bigs in the league. So I just think it's a huge trickle down effect from the impact that Clint Capella has went out there. And yes, if Collins, like you said, is getting some minutes without him, it's beneficial, but like Capella just takes so much away from someone like John Collins. He really does.
Yeah, I mean, it's tough because you have Trae Young taking the shots. Now you have Capella taking the rebounds.
Right. And the blocks. A lot of the blocks too.
Right. And then you're assuming in the postseason, Collins is getting more minutes, but so is Capella. So, right. You're probably only getting 12, 13 minutes without Capella on the floor. It's still not going to be enough to make you look like a great play.
It's a natural segue to Capella, who at the end of the regular season was $8,600. Now he's down to $7,800. He is, a legitimate 2020 threat. He could give you 20 rebounds, 20 points, and 5 blocks. It's no doubt possible. The center position doesn't have a whole lot going on, but mostly expensive guys. We'll see if Nerlens Noel is active, and we can talk about that in a second. But like you have Joel Embiid, You have Joval, you have Capella, and you have Rudy Gobert. Where does Capella slot in among those guys on, say, FanDuel or Yahoo, where you've got no multi-position eligibility?
I think fourth, but it's not by far. Like, I think he's in that same area, that same category as Gobert and Valanciunas. The reason I would put him behind them is that Gobert is a little bit less expensive, and Valanciunas, I think, plays more minutes. But one thing that's interesting right now is on DraftKings, we actually have Capella projected for slightly more ownership than Valanciunas. My assumption today was with Valanciunas coming off of a 40-minute game, he was going to get more ownership. If that holds, and if we're expecting Capella to get more ownership, I like Valanciunas more. But what I was going to say is that if that doesn't hold and Valanciunas does get the ownership that I was expecting at the beginning of the day, there's no real reason you should have a big gap between Capella and Valanciunas. These are two guys that were very similar all season long in how we talked about them. They both average about 1.4 DraftKings points per minute. They both were playing 20 to 30 minutes a game. Now you've seen Valanciunas at the end of the season playing a bunch more minutes, but in the postseason, you're seeing Capella get those 34, 35 minutes as well. So, I think he has a very high ceiling. I think he's underpriced. The problem is just that I think Joval's underpriced and I think Gobert is underpriced. And it just kind of comes down to trying to prioritize them. And in situations like that, I think ownership does become really important. I would say that looking right now, we have Gobert at 27% on DraftKings, Capella 20, Valanciunas 19. To me, if I'm playing tournaments, unless that $300 really matters, I think it's reasonable to just sort of flip the ownership, like play Joval and Capella more, play Gobert less.
Anything else for Atlanta?
No.
All right. Let's get up to 300 light. What are we, 260? All right. We got about 1,700 people watching. Good stuff for a 3-game postseason slate. Get that. What do we need? 34 likes to eclipse 300 here. Making good progress. We got about 18 minutes to go. We'll talk about the New York Knicks here. Julius Randle, first guy to touch on. I'm sure people look at last game and were like, oh man, he was terrible. Shot miserably. Played 36 minutes though. Thibodeau is going to give him a ton of work. And this is kind of where I want to hone in on and get your take. Guys like Randall, guys like Derrick Rose, who were kind of spared all regular season. You see him come in and play 38 minutes with Elfrid Payton playing 8 total minutes in that game. We've seen Thibodeau in the playoffs before. We've seen him mostly in the regular season do similar stuff. You could see these starters, particularly Rose and Randall, get just absolutely monstrous minutes again today in a must-win game.
Yeah, I think so. Randall, I would bet that barring foul trouble or injury, the 36 minutes he played last game is probably the fewest he plays in this entire series. He's someone that was, pushing 40 minutes, averaging 38, 39 minutes during the regular season. He played a really, really short stint in the second quarter of that game. I expect we get around 40 from him tonight. I would assume that he's up there with Beal and Westbrook in terms of most minutes played tonight. He's averaged 1.3 DraftKings points per minute this season. I think that makes him look very good. 9,400 on DraftKings, 9,800 on FanDuel, both perfectly fine prices. And then Derrick Rose is one of, I think, the guys that is the most beneficial to target when you first transition from regular season to postseason, because we did see his playing time trending up at the end of the regular season. So we know that he's in shape. We know he can do it. But at the same time, even though Thibodeau doesn't really care, it still makes sense to save a few minutes from Rose during the regular season and then get everything you can out of him in the postseason. He led this team with almost 38 minutes last game. He doesn't have anyone really standing in his way. Elfrid Payton may or may not still be in the starting lineup tonight. We'll have to wait and see. There's been some smoke that maybe Ntilikina replaces him, maybe Rose replaces him. So we'll have to wait and see there. Maybe quickly replaces him, but
he won't.
I think you're still getting, 35, 36 minutes at least from Derrick Rose. He's averaged a fantasy point per minute with the Knicks, and he's pretty clearly underpriced for that role.
I would love for Quickly to replace him, but just knowing Tom Thibodeau, I would be shocked if he gave him the starting role tonight.
My guess is it's Ntilikina.
I bet you're right. I bet he plays 18 minutes.
He starts, he guards Trae Young. He takes minutes from Quickly. We all play Quickly. We all bitch about it, even though we knew it was going to happen.
How many minutes are you giving Rose?
I have him at 36.
Okay. Look, 36 minutes for Rose at 5,900 is insane.
Yeah, it's good.
59 on DraftKings and FanDuel.
What'd you say?
I said he's 5,900 on DraftKings and on FanDuel.
Yeah, I think he's just, underpriced here. I mean, even if he played like 32, you still have a pretty decent path to value there. The way I see it, though, is just that unless something really weird happens, Rose is kind of unaffected, I think, by what Thibodeau does with the guards. Like if Ntilikina starts and plays more than the 8 minutes that Peyton played, I think those minutes are probably coming from Emmanuel Quickly. Whether you like it or not, that's kind of what we've seen from Thibodeau this year. If Quickly starts, I think it signals that Rose is in his same rotation and that Peyton won't play, and that Quickly is a really good play, but I don't think it affects Rose. And if Rose starts, obviously, his minutes look great. So there's nothing really that can happen to the starting lineup that makes me change how I feel about Rose.
Okay. How do you feel about Alec Burks here? And how do you feel about how he impacts somebody like RJ Barrett as well?
Yeah, I think that's really interesting. And I don't really know how much people have paid attention to it, but if you look during the regular season in games that Burks played compared to games where he did not, RJ Barrett averaged like 5 minutes more per game without Burks. And it feels like people just like have it stuck in their head that stretch where RJ Barrett was playing 38, 40 minutes and playing, as many minutes as Julius Randle, but he's averaged like 33 minutes per game in games with Alec Burks this year. You saw it again last game. He played about 32 minutes. I think you can, expect 33, 34 from Barrett, but I also expect that you're getting mid-20s from Alec Burks, and that's going to make it tough for Barrett to get a ton of minutes. And so I think that the small forward position is pretty weak today. So Barrett does still carry some value just because he's relatively inexpensive and he's decent, 0.9 to 1 fantasy points per minute. But I have trouble expecting that 37, 38 minutes that I've seen, some places giving him. So kind of just neutral on Barrett. Burks is priced up on Fanduel, but on Draftkings, I think 4,600 is a decent price tag. He's someone where there's no guarantee he closes this game. He scored 18 points in the fourth quarter last game. He was in the closing lineup. I think that we've seen throughout the season, there's a pretty good chance he closes because he just manages to play well enough to be in the closing lineup a pretty good amount. But if he's playing poorly, you certainly could see Bullock come back in and be in the closing lineup. But on average, I think you're getting, 25-ish, 26 minutes from Alec Burks, which at 4,600 at small forward on DraftKings, I think is pretty decent.
All right. Any other thoughts on the Knicks here? Oh, actually, I almost forgot. Nerlens Noel did go through shoot around. He's a game time decision. I assume it'll be in typical Tibbs fashion that we find out late, but we find out that he's playing. He's $4,000 on DraftKings, and Josh and I kind of went over this extensively on the strategy show today. I know his first game wasn't great, played 24 minutes, but I don't really care about that. He went down in the fourth quarter, and Taj came in, played almost 7 minutes, and to close the game. Is it possible that Tibbs changes things up now that he won't have to do it on the fly? Maybe, but Nerlens Noel was on pace to play over 30 minutes in that game.
Yeah, I was going to ask you because I hadn't seen the end of that game. But he came out because of the injury, right?
Came out because of the injury. Yeah, exactly. So he sprained his ankle in the fourth quarter, came out, and Taj Gibson came in, played almost 7 minutes to close the game.
Right. And so in his starts this year, Noel averaged 27.6 minutes per game. So I think, even we know Tibbs and his love affair with Taj Gibson, but even if you expect you get like a 28 to 20 minute split in favor of Noel at 4K, Noel looks like a good value, and 3,300 Gibson still looks like.
Alfred Payton remains in the starting lineup, so there goes that.
All right,
so I had to interrupt you for that one.
I'm treating it the same as last game. Maybe Payton plays a little bit more like. Well, I'll talk about that in a minute, but I'll finish with the front court first.
Go ahead. So I had to. Go ahead.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think that 28 minutes for Noel, 20 for Gibson is reasonable. You certainly could see like 32-16 in favor of Noel or something like that. At their prices, though, I think that especially because Gibson's power forward eligible, he does still offer some value there. Noel does offer some value at 4K, although the opportunity cost at center today is pretty high because you do have not a lot of options, but just such good options in Embiid, Gobert, Capella, and Valanciunas that giving up points, taking 22, 23 points and saying, oh, that's a good point per dollar play at center might be kind of tough to make up if a couple of those guys go for 50 plus.
Okay. Anything else on New York?
Yeah. So back to the backcourt. Quickly getting some ownership. I think at his price tag, you can look there. Just don't be surprised if it fails. I mean, he played 21 minutes last game. That's good to see. His second half stint was like 8 minutes. So that to me kind of just tells me, I think he has a range of like 16 to 24 minutes or 22 minutes, probably depending how he's playing. If you get 18 or so minutes from him at 3,400, he's still a decent value. So it's not, the end of the world. It's just, understand that if Peyton plays relatively well, he even plays like 14 minutes, those minutes are probably coming from Emmanuel Quickly.
Okay. We got one game to go. Memphis and Utah first. Let's say what's up to our sponsor, Monkey Knife Fight. This is actually the first show that I've done that Monkey Knife Fight is sponsored. We're happy to have them here on board with the deeper dive. Today's show is presented by Monkey Knife Fight. This player prop based contests are easy to play and don't require the time commitment that other DFS sites require. In order to be competitive with Monkey Knife Fight, you are in charge. Whether you want to play NBA, UFC, PGA, esports, or soccer, Monkey Knife Fight has it all. To get started, head over to monkeyknifefight.com. Choose which game you want to play, your contest type, and your buy-in. Even better, Monkey Knife Fight is up their instant first match deposit bonus when you sign up with the promo code Awesemo, AWESEMO, to up to $100. So sign up today. Go to monkeyknifefight.com. All right, let's talk on Memphis Grizzlies coming off that huge upset victory against Utah in Utah. They're still 10-point dogs today, though, Adam. 219.5 total. Kick it off with first in the front court, Jonas Valanciunas, who played a hand in getting old Rudy Gobert, which you don't see very often, fouling out in 25 minutes last time they faced each other.
Yeah, I think Gobert is a really strong option here. Or, God, not Gobert, Valanciunas. I think Gobert is too, but I think Valanciunas is a really strong option here. We mentioned it before when we talked about Capella, but Valanciunas is another one of these guys that you saw the playing time really, really creep up towards the end of the regular season. I know there was a point where I mentioned he had played at least 30 minutes in like 6 of his last 8 games or something after averaging about 28 minutes per game for the season. Then you go back and you look at the play-in games and, you know, the end of the regular season, he played 36 minutes against Golden State in that final regular season game. He played 38 minutes against the Spurs in the play-in game. He played 26 minutes, but fouled out against Golden State. Then he played about 39 minutes against Utah last game. This is someone that, you know, clearly is in shape to play big minutes. He has the type of game that I'm not really concerned about Rudy Gobert, because Valanciunas can do enough away from the basket, and he's just a good enough rebounder, good enough scorer that I'm not too concerned about Gobert. And Valanciunas, you know, around a 1.4 fantasy point per minute guy. You're getting 36 plus minutes as long as he avoids foul trouble. I think it makes him look like a great option here.
Okay, we had a super chat from Gabriel Mifrin, says, do you guys think there's anything to the narrative of Randall Clarkson doing better than usual tonight because there are awards this week? No, not at all. Maybe if they got snubbed. Once in a while, we'll see those snub games, but no, they won them. I mean, what's there left to prove, right?
Right, yeah, and even the snub narrative, it's more for guys like Damian Lillard and Bradley Beal. Like Jordan Clarkson would still have to go steal the ball from Donovan Mitchell.
Right, exactly. Suave with the super chat as well. Thank you to both of you. How do you feel about Lou Williams, Adam?
He played 12 minutes last game, basically backing up Trae Young. I don't really see any reason to go there.
Yeah, he'd need to do crazy things in 12 minutes. That's tough. Honestly, I'd rather go to George Hill and hope that he gets 18 minutes because that's more feasible than Lou Williams getting.
Yeah, I mean, the guy George Hill's backing up doesn't play as many minutes as Trae Young and is not as solidified in the rotation as Trae Young. So
yep, exactly. Okay, how about John Morant here? The price point you're going to be paying for him is up there with well above, as a matter of fact, guys like Ben Simmons. It's in the same ballpark as Donovan Mitchell. So I would imagine it's not going to be that easy to get to John Morant today, especially given this matchup against the Utah Jazz. But are there any Memphis guys that you think might just be going under-owned given their skill set?
So I think Morant's really tough to get to at that price point just because, you know, even on FanDuel, he's about the same price as Simmons. You certainly can always make the argument in a case like that, like, it's hard to get to him, so he's going to be low owned, and he's got a really high ceiling. Like, no arguments there. But in terms of probability, it's just a really tough spot for Morant. Dylan Brooks, I think, is sort of someone that if he's a last piece in it, like shooting guard or small forward, is fine. Same goes for Kyle Anderson, who has averaged about a fantasy point per minute, should play 30, 31 minutes. One spot that I am interested in, you know, again, going back to that point about looking for guys that for one reason or another played fewer minutes than you would expect last game. Jaren Jackson Jr. only projected for 12% ownership right now on DraftKings at 5,700, played about 23 or 24 minutes last game. He was in foul trouble, which again is not something that is unusual. It's pretty likely to happen again. That's what Jaren Jackson does. But if he somehow avoids foul trouble, he played north of 30 minutes in games to close out the season. Like, we can get 32, 33 minutes from Jaren Jackson, who's over a fantasy point per minute player. You know, it's a tough matchup, and he comes with the foul trouble risk. So it's not someone that I would want to go to if he was popular, but I think he's probably just going to be under projected because of how last game went, even though I think it was a combination of him not playing particularly well and being in foul trouble. So I do have tournament interest in Jaren Jackson here.
What do you think his minutes ceiling is? I was contemplating this today, and he does feel like one of those guys where the minute ceiling on Jaren Jackson feels pretty low, but he is a decent enough per minute guy that he can kind of mitigate that in the event that he does play like 33.
Yeah, I'll say probably like 32 or 33. Like talking ceiling in terms of like realistic chance that he avoids foul trouble enough and B plays well enough that the Grizzlies want to keep him out there. I would say like 32 or 33.
All right. Would you say he's one of your favorite lower owned plays today?
Yeah, I mean, I guess just because like it's a 3-game slate with pretty set rotations, so it's pretty tough to find upside that other people aren't rostering.
Yeah. The only thing I don't like about him is he takes less than 20% of his shots from within 3 feet of the basket. He's attempting 48% of his shots from 3 this year. That's fine. You know, I'd rather you do that than be a mid-range guy that attempts 70% from like 14 to 20 feet. But just the overall shot selection for a guy of Jaren Jackson's size and athleticism, you'd really think that he'd be able to get to the rim a little bit more and get to the basket. But I understand too, with Jonas Valanciunas out there, life isn't exactly easy in that respect. It's just the shot selection for Jaren Jackson can make it so when he has bad games, it's just really ugly.
Yeah, and I'll say too, as far as the lower owned guys thing goes, like Valanciunas is 19%, Jackson's 12%. If I can only go to one of those, I'm going Valanciunas.
For sure. Anything else tonight on the Memphis Grizzlies?
Nope.
All right. What about Dylan Brooks? I mean, I got to ask you about Dylan Brooks. The guy's just been fantastic.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of mentioned him. Like it's a tough matchup. He played 36 minutes last game, which is really good to see. He's at a reasonable price point. The biggest thing that I think helps Brooks get into some lineups is that he's shooting guard, small forward eligible, depending where you're playing. Both of those positions are pretty weak. Small forward in particular is really weak. So I could see going there. Like I think I would rather go to Dylan Brooks on DraftKings at 6,300 than RJ Barrett at 6,200. I don't think it's, it's another spot where like if you disagree, I don't think you're crazy, but I would give the edge to Dylan Brooks. So in that sense, I think it's fine. Kind of the same reason that I'm interested in Kyle Anderson. It's just a relatively weak position and they're decent price points. But at the same time, these guys are playing Utah. I'm not really looking to single them out. And I think in a lot of builds, for example, where I have Dylan Brooks for 6,300 at small forward, which I think is fine, I'll probably end up liking my lineup a little bit better if that becomes like $4,000 Danny Green instead.
All right. Last call for likes here before we turn it over to Josh and Greg. We're 35 away from 400. So let's make that a reality so I can maintain my pride leaving this show and turning it over to the Live Before Lock crew. Well, let's wrap it up with Utah, starting with no one other than Donovan Mitchell, who hasn't played in nearly a month and a half, presumably gets regular minutes, was pissed that he didn't get to play last time out, Adam. What do you think of the price point today? Could Donovan Mitchell just be a very, very good play that might not be getting the attention that he deserves? Because his ownership is looking like it's going to be very low.
Yeah, I'm not, unless we get word otherwise, I'm not really expecting him to be limited. He was dealing with an ankle sprain. He has practiced 3 times in the last week. He thought he could play last game. We're not talking like a knee injury or some sort of like ACL, MCL scare, anything like that. I assume Donovan Mitchell's playing close at least to normal minutes here, unless we get word otherwise. And if that's the case, I mean, 8,400, you're going to feel a little bit better about Bradley Beal in that price range. You're going to feel a little bit better about Trae Young, but 11% ownership right now going to Donovan Mitchell. I agree with you. I mean, you could just very easily see him play 36, 37 minutes, and you're talking about someone that averages 1.2 DraftKings points per minute.
Feels like it could be a difference maker if he really comes in around 10, 11%. That's pretty crazy. FL Void, real quickly get to this. Thank you for the super chat. He said, I'm only one lineup tonight on DraftKings and I'm a hand builder. I seem to be getting only players from the first 2 games. How do you feel about making a lineup with no one from the last game? Adam, quick response to that.
That's fine. I mean, there's a couple guys I like on Memphis. There's a couple guys I like on Utah, but
no real priority.
There's nothing that I would say you have to have.
Yeah, I'm with you. I don't feel like just because there's 3 games, do you have to have someone from every game? You wouldn't be doing that on a 7 or 8 game slate. It doesn't mean you have to do it on a slate like this. Close out Utah, Rudy Gobert, and the rest of these guys. Jordan Clarkson, obviously at a crazy price point with Donovan Mitchell returning, and Royce O'Neal. Floor is yours.
Yeah, so I mean, Royce O'Neal, I'll just touch on quickly. He's getting the most ownership on Utah. He's gonna play, good minutes. What did he play? 36 and a half minutes last game. He's 4,100. That's the case for him. Whenever Royce O'Neal's popular, you can try and find alternatives because he's not a very good fantasy option, but he is a good point per dollar play just because he's so cheap. Rudy Gobert, I think, is one of the better center options tonight. He's averaged about 1.3 DraftKings points per minute this year. He averaged about 30 minutes per game, but in the postseason, barring foul trouble, especially if Valanciunas is going to play 36 plus, I assume you're getting at least mid 30s from Gobert. So he's going to look really good. So I would say Gobert is the top guy for me from Utah. O'Neal's a good point per dollar value that you're not going to feel very good about, but that'll help out your lineup. Donovan Mitchell, I like at his ownership in tournaments. Conley is fine, but he does take a bit of a hit with Mitchell coming back. Beyond that, though, I mean, I think Bogdanovich's price tag came up enough. Clarkson's price tag, Engel's price tag all came up enough to where with Mitchell coming back, I think they're going to be really tough to get to.
All right. That'll do it for us. I'll say this. If you are looking for a narrative, your narrative should be Donovan Mitchell is pissed off and he's going to shit all over Memphis. In all seriousness, though, give me the Utah Jazz to cover this game. I know 10 points is a lot in the postseason. I got him, I think, at 9 earlier today. I think they smoke them. I think they smoked Memphis today. Even this series up at 1, they are a markedly better team than the Grizzlies are when fully healthy with Donovan Mitchell. When Rudy Gobert isn't in foul trouble, totally different scenario here, and they only lost by a couple last time out. That's my spot for today. That's the bet I'm going the heaviest on. Adam, anything else before we turn it over?
Nope.
All right. Concise. We'll see you back here very shortly tomorrow on the Deeper Dive. Thanks for watching, everyone. Good luck tonight. Josh and Greg taking you all the way up till 7 right now on Live Before Love.
And we are live. Welcome to NBA Live Before Lock. It is Wednesday, May 26th. I am Josh Engelman. I am joined by Greg Ehrenberg, and we are brought to you by Monkey Knife Fight. Not the first time that I have done the Monkey Knife Fight promo, because they were the presenting sponsor of the Process Show for a little bit. Now they're moving to bigger and better things. I'm not going to lie. NBA Live Before Lock is better than the Process Show. What do you want me to say? I can't help it. It just is. Don't get me wrong. I love the show. Oh, Greg, I got to ask you. This is the most important thing we have to talk about on this slate. Are you ready?
I can only imagine what this question is going to be.
What is your preference in terms of reading books? Paper or digital? Let's say Kindle, for example.
Oh, I'm illiterate.
Fair. That's all you needed to know. That's the expected answer that's what I expected from Laffy. I didn't really expect it from you, but here we are. Okay, fair enough.
My actual answer though is actual books.
Oh God, another dummy. Anyway, we'll move on since that's useless. We got 3 games ahead of us. We've got a ton of time to work our way through everything. And I mean, to me, we're not really waiting on any news. I'm fully expecting Nerlens Noel to play. By all accounts, everything went swimmingly during his warm-up. Are you waiting on anything in particular? We have the Knicks starting lineup. I think we're where we need to be.
I'm waiting on. I mean, we don't have the Knicks starting lineup because we don't know if Noel is playing. But I have no clue if Noel's going to play or not. I tend to think he's probably more likely to play than sit. But I do think it's up in the air.
Well, when I say that we have the Knicks starting lineup, we know what the Knicks starting lineup is if Nerlens Noel plays, because Elfrid Payton is still in the starting lineup.
Yes, that is true for reasons unknown.
I mean, technically speaking, Tom Thibodeau said the starting lineup is the same. So my assumption is Nerlens Noel is playing.
That is, yeah. I mean, if we're going to take him literally, I think that's a reasonable assumption. And I do think if Noel is healthy enough to play, he's going to play. But I mean, he didn't finish last game, so I'm not totally sure.
That is a very true statement. We'll get to him in a little bit because I have quite a few thoughts on Nerlens Noel. But before we do anything, please hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell, all that good stuff. The likes are important. I don't want Laffy to think like he did a good job in the hour before this. We're going to run whatever number he had before, I don't know, something under 500. It'll be well north of that by the time we finish this show up. Let's take a look at the guards to start this one off. It's an interesting slate of guards, that's for sure. The pay-up options exist largely in one spot. How are you feeling about Russell Westbrook and or Bradley Beal today?
So on the whole, they're not priority plays for me. They're definitely, it's a 3-game slate, so you can't outright say to fade anybody, except, I mean, the price on Westbrook is still pretty exorbitant. It's pretty funny how we got to a point where for pretty much the entire time that Bradley Beal was out, at least for DraftKings purposes, he was woefully underpriced, and they just never really moved him. Then all of a sudden, Beal comes back, they get into the playoffs, and they have a really tough matchup against the Sixers. Like, hey, let's jack up Russell Westbrook's price. It's not as extreme as it was last slate, but I mean, we've seen since Bradley Beal's come back, expectations have to be tempered for him a lot. And you look at the last 4 games, 62 fantasy points, 54, 52, 44. Not terrible games, but they're not good relative to his price. And there's other guys to pay up for on the slate that I much prefer, namely Joel Embiid on the other side of the game.
Oh, man. Who would have thought that we would get to a point where Russ is now like 11-4 on DraftKings, and what in the hell is he on FanDuel? Well, same thing, basically, right?
Yeah, we have, he's 11-6 on FanDuel, but yeah, more or less the same.
And it's just like, he looks pretty good, but not totally good. And that's just because we see everybody, we've talked about it a little bit on the strategy show, and I heard the guys in Deeper Dive talk about it. We're seeing the other stars in the league playing more minutes, and that helps to narrow the gap for what his ultimate ceiling is. So I agree. I don't want to say lukewarm on Beal and Westbrook. I'm more neutral on Bradley Beal, particularly on DraftKings. Oh, yeah, on DraftKings. Well, that's a really weird way to enunciate DraftKings. DraftKings. I really like Beal on DraftKings at 8,800. It's a little bit different on FanDuel where he's 9,500. But Russ on DK today at 11-4, I'm not all that enamored with. I think you need a pretty big day. I'm getting to more Embiid as my preferred pay-up option. So Beal, cool with me on DK. Russ, a little bit less so. It's really weird to be talking about DK now, too.
Yeah, by the way, I totally agree with you, though. The other thing also is just given the prices of the two, and my preference is to not have Russell Westbrook and Bradley Beal in the same lineups. And just given where the prices are for the two of them, Bradley Beal is a much stronger play, which then ultimately leads to more of Beal than Westbrook for me personally. And the other thing to consider, too, is we've gotten to this point in the season where it's really hard to find value that's any bit reliable. Like, we've had a bunch of really wonky value plays in the playoffs where all of a sudden it's like, hey, look, Bryn Forbes is 19 real-life points at the end of the first quarter at a 1% ownership. But in general, there haven't been very many reliable cheap plays. I think we do potentially have a really good one in Taj Gibson tonight if Nerlens Noel ends up sitting, although I kind of like Taj Gibson either way. But with the amount of difficulty it is to find cheap plays to really like at this point in the season, the salary savings we get from Bradley Beal are much more important than they were a couple of weeks ago when Westbrook was just crushing and we had a million cheap guys to roster.
Who is your favorite guard on this slate? Who's the guy that you expect to have the most of today?
Derrick Rose. Even though Elfrid Payton, and this is a little bit to me also, where I was expecting Derrick Rose to start, and I set the minutes accordingly. And then even when Elfrid Payton was starting, I was like, screw it. I still think Derrick Rose is playing a ton.
I did the literal exact same thing. Elfrid Payton isn't even in, like, I don't have him projected for a single minute as of right now. I have Rose in at 34. And I was just like, do I really want to just like go back and give Payton these minutes instead of Toppin and take 2 more off of Quickly? And I was just like, no, I don't. I really, really don't. So you and I are in the exact same boat with Derrick Rose, and he's one of my most exposed players on DraftKings today, 5,900 across both sites. Look, he's going to play a ton. I'd prefer him to get the start so his minutes are even more firm, because he can lose out because of not starting. You do kind of limit your total upside in minutes. Otherwise, you're just going to come in 4 minutes into the game and then never leave the floor. So it does kind of nerf him a bit. But even at 34, we saw in the last game, I think that he could play more than 34. I feel comfortable using 34 as my jump off point. And when I do that, Derrick Rose is my favorite play on DraftKings. So I'm pretty cool with it.
Yeah, we are on the same page there. And I mean, the other thing to consider too is, Derrick Rose coming off the bench last game played 38 minutes. That is a ton of minutes. Thibodeau, I didn't give him I think 38 minutes is a ridiculous number to actually project him for. I gave him 32, but that still makes him a really strong play. But if you were to ask me, does he play more or less minutes than what I gave him? I would say more.
Super chat from Dennis Gregory says, paper hands Engelman, Brody all the way. I don't know what to do with that sort of information.
He disagrees with you. He likes Russell Westbrook.
Why do I have paper hands because of that?
Because you're not playing him. This is like a crypto and NFT term, but he's not really using it correctly in this.
No, he's not even remotely close. Yeah. So I don't know. You probably should have hung on to that $5 if I had to guess. Anyway, what other guards are you looking at for today? Is it a Trae Young day? Ben Simmons seems to be incredibly popular, as he is to me at the very least. What are you doing with Donovan Mitchell? So many questions at the guard spot today.
Yeah, so as far as Fanduel goes, I think the 2 best point guard plays are Ben Simmons and Derrick Rose. One thing I think is really interesting about Simmons is, to me at least, a points per dollar sense. I think he's a really strong play, but you look at the guys who he's priced around, and it's somewhat flat ownership. Ja Morant projecting for 21% ownership. Trae Young projecting for 30. Russell Westbrook 32. So the 32 for Ben Simmons, sure, he's popular, but all the other guys in that price range are popular also. And I just think that Ben Simmons is a much better play on a points per dollar basis.
We're on the same page. Are you playing DraftKings or FanDuel today?
DraftKings.
Okay. So you are very heavy on Derrick Rose and Ben Simmons?
Yes. And also, before the show started, Jordan had asked me, because we got to bring producer Jordan Klein to the show. He was very upset when we started the show, and he said, so Tobias Harris is your favorite 76er, which I don't even know what made him ask me that question. But I said, no, not that I have an issue with Tobias Harris, but I have more exposure to Joel Embiid and Ben Simmons personally. I have Tobias Harris in my player pool, but those are the 76ers that I prefer to him.
Okay. Yeah, I have a bit more Simmons than Harris, but I do have more Harris than Joel Embiid right now. And I did limit those guys, so I can't have more than 2 of them in one lineup. There's just too much salary on DraftKings for me to want to have all 3. And if for some strange reason this goes to triple OT and you need all 3 of them, I'm willing to just eat that loss, I guess.
No, I think that's fair. I also did not want to get all 3 of them in the same lineup, but I don't have an issue getting to, say, like Simmons, Embiid, and Danny Green or something like that.
Same. My only limit was to that main pay up trio. Well, since we're talking about guards, let's at least touch on him a little bit since you just mentioned him. What are your thoughts on Danny Green? 4K on DraftKings, and to me, one of the better value plays of the day.
Yeah, and it's really just a thing of, we've gotten to a point in the season where, to me, if there's anybody who's starting that I feel fairly comfortable in their minutes, Danny Green is certainly going to play pretty substantial minutes as long as the game stays close. Like, we don't need those 38 to 4,200 guys to go out and score, 35 fantasy points like we need in the regular season. If you get somewhere in the neighborhood of 20 fantasy points from Danny Green, it's probably enough on this slate when you just compare it to the other options around him. So to me, I agree. Danny Green, a really strong value play just because he's starting. We could count on him for big minutes. And maybe people are a little bit jaded by these types of plays because they've seen, in recent slates where it's like, well, I could just roster Bryn Forbes or Dwayne Dedmon off the bench, and I'm going to find this guy who's min price that's going to go score 40 fantasy points. And more often than not, that's not going to be the case. There's definitely nobody on this slate that I view that way. And I really like the minute security and the overall floor that we're getting out of Danny Green.
Yeah, I got tweeted at saying I should never tell people to play Royce O'Neal and that I shouldn't give advice if I'm telling people to play Royce O'Neal. Look, if you're making lineups today and you're able to, you look at it and you're like, man, I really like all 8 of those spots. Make sure you check the salary remaining because it's probably like negative 4,000 or something. You're going to have 2 dudes in your lineup that you just don't like. It's almost impossible to build a lineup that you're really confident in. You have to take some guys that are just going to be cheaper minutes shots, guys that might play 12 minutes that you're hoping play 18 and have like a big per minute day. It's not, this isn't a normal 8-game slate during the middle of the regular season where there's 12 different sub 4K guys that you could roster. It's just not the same.
Yeah, and there's no late scratches unless Donovan Mitchell just randomly gets ruled out or something like that again. But in general, right, it's the playoffs. And if somebody isn't on the injury report, they're going to play. There isn't some wonky injury situations that come out last second more often than not. So there's just not value to be had.
Yeah, trust me, I don't like recommending 4K guys that are going to play 32 minutes and are 0.65 fantasy point per minute guys. That's not ideal to me. I can't help it. That's what these guys are for today. Are there any guards that are picking up more ownership than you think they should be picking up? Who's too chalky today?
Russell Westbrook. I mean, I know we talked about him before.
Was it me or you? Oh, it's not me. Woo! It's not me.
But it's just, there we go. Let me turn this back. I had
old paper hands, Greg.
Listen, my power actually just went out and then flickered back on very quickly. Like that was insanely quick that it came on and off. This is scary.
You should pay the bills more frequently.
Oh, I don't even. Whatever. Let's move past this and hope that doesn't happen again. That was scary. But anyway,
Russell Westbrook is over.
Okay,
let's talk a little bit about that. Paper hands.
All right. So more than anything with Russell Westbrook, it's just a factor of salary to where he's so expensive. We talked about how hard it is to find value on this slate that it's hard for me to comfortably fit him into lineups, and he's really popular. So on FanDuel, I was saying before, I don't think he warrants having about the same ownership as Ben Simmons and the same ownership as guys like Trae Young, because it's kind of hard to get to that salary. And then on DraftKings also, it's a number that's hard to get to, and he's priced all the way up to 11,400. And we've seen his usage and overall role in the Wizards offense really take a step back in the last few games with Bradley Beal healthy again.
Well, if it helps, I completely agree with you. But I don't think anybody on the show is going to be surprised because we already talked about Russell Westbrook a bit. But no, I do think that he's going a bit over-owned. And I am coming in pretty light on him, all things considered. I have about 11% as of right now. Anybody else is picking up ownership that you don't totally agree with?
Let's see. Some of the other players at guard that are pretty popular. Neto's pretty bad. No, it's not too popular though. I would say
he was the next guy I was going to name if that helps.
Yeah, I mean it's not some egregious ownership. It's maybe a little high for me, except it's nothing crazy. Actually, Grayson Allen picking up double-digit ownership, that's a little bit too rich for me. Grayson Allen played 23 minutes last game against the Jazz. The game before against the Warriors, he played 25 minutes. He had an outlier game. He scored a bunch of fantasy points. The game went to overtime. He generally sucked that game, though. Like, even from an actual real-life perspective, I'm watching him going like, why the hell is Grayson Allen still on the court? He's turning the ball over. He's taking terrible shots. He happened to make some of them, and he walked into a bunch of defensive stats. But double-digit ownership for Grayson Allen is a little much for me, and I don't think he's going to play a ton.
Well, you named two of the three guys that I was potentially going to name as guys I thought were aggressively over-owned. Neto was one. Grayson Allen was the second one. Kevin Huerter was the third one. Another guy, not that he's picking up a ton of ownership, but he is in double digits on DraftKings. And at that point in time, I think that's too high. So we are on the same page for our fades at guard at the very least.
Yeah, I agree with you on Kevin Huerter also. Wasn't somebody who I immediately thought to mention. I think the other ones are a little higher, but yeah, Huerter also somebody who I don't think is going to play a ton.
Schedule for the rest of the night does exist. PGA Live Before Lock coming up 8 p.m. Eastern. Ben Raza, Eric Lindquist breaking down this week's Charles Schwab. You should be listening to Ben coming in. Got one of his best bets right last week. As did I, by the way, but they don't have me on PGA Live before lock. I don't know. They don't want the goods, I guess. But you should listen to Ben and Eric instead. That should be fine. Free premium content going on today. This is the perfect day. If you want to check out awesemo.com and check out what we've got going on, today's a great day, especially if you're watching this show. I assume you're interested in the playoffs. NBA player projections are free. If you're looking to play today, at the very least, go check out our projections, cross-reference them for yourself, get an idea of what we've got going on behind the paywall. If you're playing baseball, MLB ownership projections are free for the main slate. PGA projections are also free. So if you're tuning into that PGA Live Before Lock show at 8 o'clock, you could also check out what we're projecting for each golfer. And then NHL player projections free as well. It's a good day to go to awesemo.com. That's about as good as it's going to get.
Yeah, by the way, it is literally hailing out here right now.
That's not ideal. Don't
no,
worry.
No, it is not.
Did I just see your lights flicker a little bit?
Yeah, it is scary times here. I don't know if there's a tornado or something going on outside, but the wind is very loud, and I could look outside and see it's hailing.
Well, worst case scenario, if you get disconnected, we just go to a solo me, and don't worry, I will carry this thing straight till 7 o'clock. So we'll be fine. Don't worry, anybody. I'm not going anywhere. Maybe I'll turn on another camera. You could just get two angles of me. Really step up the game.
I like that.
Here.
People get one of your face and one of your backside or something.
Oh yeah, maybe I'll pull one underneath the desk. Anyway, let's talk about forwards on this slate. Who is your primary forward for today?
So primary forward for today, let me bring up my ownership here. So at least for DraftKings, it is Danny Green, just because of where the price point is at. Somebody else you mentioned before, I like Royce O'Neal a lot today, and not even somebody I have projected for an insane amount of fantasy points. It's hard to find guys in that price range that are, viable. It's hard to find value plays today. I have him projected for over 30 minutes. Which I think is totally reasonable when you consider his recent run of playing time. Last game he played 37 minutes. He only scored 14 DraftKings points. But, I don't think the 37 he's going to do again because we're going to have Donovan Mitchell back in the mix. But even so, anybody who's cheap that we could expect to get over 30 minutes of playing time, it's somebody I'm going to be interested in today.
Well, I'm team Danny Green, that's for sure. I'm team Royce O'Neal, that's for sure. There are a couple other guys that I'm getting quite a bit of. I do actually have a lot of Tobias Harris. I think the 7K price tag works pretty well. I'm a little nervous about his ownership, but he grades out as one of my top 5 guys overall. So I try not to get too far away from that when you're still, to me, he's the good chalk for the day. RJ Barrett is a guy that's popping up a little bit for me, and I'm not really all that comfortable with it. Have you taken a look at RJ Barrett at all?
I have a minimal amount of exposure to him, but he's in my player pool.
Okay. I have more than a minimum amount, but I am working on that at the very least, trying to dial it back a little bit. Let's just transition from RJ Barrett to the rest of this weird Knicks team, at least from a forward perspective, because we've got RJ Barrett, we've got Alec Burks, we have Taj Gibson, Julius Randle. There are a lot of forward options for this Knicks team. Do you prefer Burks to Barrett? How do you see this shaking out? What about Reggie Bullock, another guy that's sort of okay? Let's put it this way. What do you think the Knicks closing lineup looks like in a competitive game?
After what they did last game, it's hard to say. It's also going to matter if Nerlens Noel is ultimately in or not. I think he's more likely to play than sit, but I'm not totally confident as you are that that's going to be the case. But I'll say I think Derrick Rose, Julius Randle, RJ Barrett, Alec Burks, and Noel or Gibson.
Okay. That makes sense to me. Nothing crazy. Because I don't have Bullock projecting very well. He's not a guy that I'm getting to. I am getting to Alec Burks. I am getting to RJ Barrett. Do you have any Bullock thoughts?
So one thing I find really difficult to predict about the Knicks rotation today is, so we've seen throughout the year, so I'll start with this. Throughout the year, the Knicks have always, and Thibodeau in particular, has always leaned so heavily on his starters and has been somebody who hey, I play my starters 40 minutes a game. I don't care. It's an 72 game season this year. I run my guys into the ground. And then for the playoffs, when every team goes and plays their starters, the minutes that Thibodeau played his starters in the regular season, he goes the opposite. And all of a sudden it's like Obi Toppin's in the game. We've got the bench, Derrick Rose playing 30 minutes off the bench. And it's like, I don't know what to make of that other than that I think it's a little fluky. I think the Knicks got down in that game. The bench played extremely well, quickly played well. Derrick Rose played really well off the bench. So I do tend to think that we're going to see the minutes take a little bit of a step back from some of these bench guys. So I found Bullock's minutes really, really difficult to nail down. But down the stretch of the season, you know, he was playing. Look at the last handful of Knicks games in the regular season. Against the Clippers, he played 46 minutes. Against the Lakers, 46 minutes. Against the Spurs, 39 minutes. Against the Hornets, 40 and a half minutes. Against the Celtics, 34 minutes. And then we get to the playoffs. And by the way, these were games that mattered for the Knicks. And in the playoffs, he goes and plays 18 and a half minutes. So to me, I'm like, what is this? Like, what are we doing here, Tibbs? So I kind of split the difference and gave him 28 minutes, which I don't think is correct. I think he's going to play either way below or way above that. So I think he's a viable GPP option, and I find the Knicks minutes pretty difficult to nail down today.
I do as well. Really scary team. We've gotten so many questions about Alec Burks because he had such a big time hot shooting day in game one. I don't see it today. I'm getting to him for sure because, I like the price and value is tough to find, and I've got him in for 26 minutes, but to me, there's nothing stopping Reggie Bullock from playing like 38 minutes today and the rest of these guys being mildly limited. Like, to me, that gets really, I think it's going to be more hot hand than anything else.
I'm not too concerned about Alec Burks' minutes, though, because it's been, actually, if anything, it's weird to me that Burks only played 26 minutes last game. If you look at his last 4 games, in the last 3 games of the regular season, he missed some time with an injury, but he came back against the Spurs. He played 34 minutes. Then he played 30 against the Hornets, 25 against the Celtics, 26 against the Hawks. So, I feel pretty comfortable he's going to be in that 26 to 30 minute range. The only thing I think is a little weird is, as well as he played last game, why did he not get like the 36 minutes that other guys got?
I don't think Tibbs is thinking about it at all. Like, I don't think he's realizing anything that's going on while he's live in a game.
Yeah, it was really weird rotations, and I tend to think it was definitely a little bit fluky. It seems the field could potentially be even above the ownership we have projected for Alec Burks, just based on some of the comments I've seen from people, and also just a little bit of recency bias. They're also being, primetime game. A lot of people were watching. They saw how well Burks played. Like, it wouldn't surprise me. A lot of people are building their lineups, and they just gravitate more towards Burks than the numbers might show.
Any other forwards you have your eye on, or anybody that's standing out pretty aggressively to you as over-owned?
So somebody else I have my eye on, because we have to talk about him here, Taj Gibson. He's somebody who, last game, even with Noel in there, he still ended up playing 24 minutes. And I still think there's a chance that Taj Gibson, he's been a Tibbs guy for forever. Gibson wouldn't even be in the league anymore if Thibodeau wasn't still a coach. Just they're like a package deal. Wherever Thibodeau goes, Gibson goes with him. He was with him in Minnesota. He was with him in Chicago. I think that he really trusts Taj Gibson. And even if Noel plays, I have questions whether Noel is totally 100% or not. And that could also be more reason that kind of drives up the playing time for Gibson a little bit. So I think Noel's definitely a good GPP play, but I like Taj Gibson as a tournament play as well.
I have just unhealthy amounts of Nerlens Noel right now, which we will get to when we get to that center spot. But he's my dude for today, at least as of right now. Not to say that I'm not getting to Taj, because he's 3,300. And if anything does go wrong for Nerlens Noel, he's clearly the guy that benefits for it. But I'm a little surprised to see Taj being in like a quarter of lineups right now. That to me seems like it's a little bit higher than it should be. Like, people are already getting out in front of something that hasn't happened.
Yeah, but with that said, if we do find out that Noel's out, then that number is much too low.
Oh, yeah. If we find out that Nerlens Noel is out, Taj Gibson should be like 60% owned or more today.
Yeah, he's the best play on the slate.
Yep. Not even remotely close to. There is no argument otherwise. I assume that will not happen. And I assume that Taj Gibson will be slightly over-owned. At least that's my hope. Any other guys at forward you think are over-owned today? Because I've got another one, and he's on the Knicks.
Let's see. So if it isn't, I'm trying to think where you might be going with this.
I'm not trying to be tricky.
I'm just trying to think which players we haven't talked about yet. Because I feel like we've talked about who have we not? We've talked about almost every Knick player right now. Who have we not mentioned yet? Quickly?
I think Julius Randle is pretty significantly over-owned today.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I don't know why I overlooked that we haven't talked about Randall. I don't disagree with that at 24%. I have him in 10% of my lineups right now. He was really popular on the last slate as well, and it didn't quite make a lot of sense to me, especially because we just have so many guys to pay up for that I think are overall better plays than Julius Randle. Like Bradley Beal is cheaper than Randle. Joel Embiid is about in the same price range as Julius Randle, and I have Joel Embiid project for way more fantasy points. And the other thing, too, that I think we have to talk about with Julius Randle is he was great in the regular season, way outperformed what anybody's expectations ever could have been from him. But here's what's different about Julius Randle and other superstars. Other stars could play more minutes in the playoffs, right? Joel Embiid.
Nerlens Noel is available.
Okay. So I think Noel's a pretty strong GPP play now. We'll hit on that in a second. But what I was going to say, Joel Embiid could go out and play 38 minutes, and that was something he rarely ever did in the regular season. We could see, Trae Young play extended minutes. We could see any of these guys play extended minutes. Rudy Gobert, Donovan Mitchell. There is no increased minutes for Julius Randle. He was playing 40 minutes per game in the regular season, so there is no playoff bump for him. So I think that people are just kind of gravitating towards Julius Randle because maybe marquee name, he played well in the regular season, but he's not getting the bump that these other guys are.
Oh no.
What's this?
Doesn't get any worse than this. Over under in YouTube chat says Noel lock button. I have to change everything that I've got going on because if that is where he's at, I assume that I'm going to get my clock clean tonight. Oh, that's going to be hard to deal with.
Given the ownership, I think that's, I want to get some more exposure to Nerlens Noel than Taj Gibson. I think both of them certainly good plays. People you want to be on in cash games. I would say that Taj Gibson is the better play of the two for cash purposes, but for tournaments, Noel has been a really good fantasy producer for a really long time. And Taj Gibson's certainly going to be in the rotation. He's going to get his minutes because, like I said, he's a Tibbs guy, but now we got this news in advance that Nerlens Noel is going to play. And I think given that it's come out an hour ahead of the game, that gives me a little bit more comfort about his status than if it was to go up to like 15 minutes before the game. That to me would really mean like, okay, he's really testing it before the game to see how he feels. The idea that they are able to release an hour in advance he's playing, the ankle I think is generally fine. And if you look at his playing time and numbers down the stretch of the regular season, he played 32 minutes against the Celtics. He played 34 minutes against the Hornets. Really, the biggest factor that could potentially hold down Noel's minutes is foul trouble. I think I'm not really all that concerned about the ankle injury now, given when we got this news.
Now over under is speaking in the third person. Says over under is a DFS basketball mind. Well, if it's a basketball mind, I believe your basketball is deflated. So good luck with that. Any other forwards you want to touch on before we move into the centers?
Let's see. Is there anybody of note that we have not talked about? DeAndre Hunter as a potential contrarian option. So DeAndre Hunter, he's starting for the Hawks now. And I mean, the minutes weren't there for him last game. But I think it's a factor more than anything of that he didn't play well, but just the fact that he's starting, he's cheap. I think that there's maybe a little bit of hidden sneaky upside there because if he gets off to a good start, I assume the Hawks are going to let him play extended minutes. And he's somebody who's been, an okay fantasy producer at times for the season as a starter. He started 20 games, 31 minutes per game and 29 Draftkings points was his average in those games. I think there's a little bit of minutes upside in DeAndre Hunter, and I think he's somebody worth taking flyer on.
I hate to disagree with you because it's not that I don't think that he's worth a flyer. I think he's going a little bit owned more than he should. And I don't know if his utility against the Knicks is as big as it would be in a series against a team that has a good offense. To me, he's sort of in like the inverse of that kind of series. I don't think that he provides a lot if he's out there guarding, I don't know, RJ Barrett or Reggie Bullock in this scenario, potentially. So I am actually pretty light on DeAndre Hunter. I want to be wrong though. Well, not wrong in that it makes me lose money, but I am pulling for DeAndre Hunter to be good in basketball. So I'm happy that he's back, but he's not somebody that I'm getting to today.
Yeah, to me, it's really just that I think there's potential for those minutes to go up. And I mean, there are guys like, Tony Snell, that could fall out of the rotation. I don't know that Lou Williams has to necessarily go out and play 14 minutes again. Kevin Huerter could maybe see a little step back in minutes. I don't think that Gallo's minutes are really secure. I don't think it's a lock by any means that Hunter plays big minutes. I just think there's wiggle room there. And whenever there's upside for somebody to play more minutes than they're playing. And also, it's not like he's a super popular play. He's, 11% owned the last time I checked. And I'll see if maybe there's an update there, but I don't find that to be like a problematic ownership.
No, not at all. I'd be more likely to go to Gallo than Hunter.
Okay.
Because I think he fits this particular game more. I do like the idea of going to one of those two guys though, because I think, look, I'd be very surprised if they both get some sort of minutes uptick, say from 24 to 28, but I would expect one of them to be able to do that. That's where I stand.
Yeah. And to me, I mean, Hunter's a little bit cheaper. The value is a little more important on this slate than most. But yeah, if you feel kind of similarly to Gallo that I do about Hunter, I have no issue with that.
Time to shout out the presenting sponsor. That would be Monkey Knife Fight. And I am used to talking about Monkey Knife Fight because they were the presenting sponsor for the Process Show. And now they are the presenting sponsor for this. So whether you're trying to play NBA, UFC, PGA, esports, soccer, you can do that at Monkey Knife Fight. Just go to monkeyknifefight.com, use the promo code Awesemo, and get an instant match deposit bonus of up to $100, which means if you deposit $50, they will match with $50. If you deposit $100, they'll match with $100. And if you deposit $200, they'll still only give you $100 because it's capped at $100. You can't go any higher than that. Tomorrow, they're running a free game for a chance to win $15. All you have to do, this is it. All you have to do is select whether Jimmy Butler gets more or less than 23.5 points and whether or not Giannis gets more or less than 27.5 points, which is going to be kind of interesting given the way that series is going. If you predict both of those things, you win $15. It's that easy. Nothing crazy. 100% free. You don't have to do anything different. So go to monkeyknifefight.com and go check that out. And normally I would do a promo for our promos, but we don't have a promo, so I have no promo. Let's move on to the centers. This is an oddly deep center crop for a 3-game playoff slate, but it feels like we've got everything. Noel, that's who I'm leading with, obviously. Embiid, Joval. We've already touched on Taj Gibson, Rudy Gobert, John Collins, Clint Capella. There's probably somebody I didn't name. Julius Randle technically has center eligibility. What are you doing at center today?
I really like Joel Embiid. I have him projected for even more fantasy points than Russell Westbrook today. And I think that if we look at what happened in the first game of that series, maybe people are going to be a little bit skittish because Embiid played under 30 minutes in that spot. But if this game is competitive, Joel Embiid might go play 36 to 38 minutes. What happened last game is it was just foul trouble. And by the way, some of them were really wonky fouls. Like there was a foul he picked up. It was his third foul in the second quarter. It was just a total fence, and he made no contact on the play. I honestly think if Doc Rivers would have challenged that play, the call would have been overturned. And then ultimately, by the way, everything just shook here. I don't know if you could hear the thunder and lightning in the background, but it is scary times here. I need a hug. I don't like those loud noises. But anyway,
you need Thunder Buddies for life, man.
Oh my God. Yeah. I could use one of those vests. But yeah, so Joel Embiid, I think that there's a lot of playing time upside here that people might not be recognizing just because he got into foul trouble last game.
I think you're right. I'm a little surprised that I don't have as much Embiid as I was expecting to get to. He grades out quite highly, but I have a ton of exposure going to Nerlens Noel at this point. And Joval, because his relatively low ownership, Joval is the guy that I'm getting to a little bit more. So he's the guy that I've been sort of taking my stand on at 8K on DK. But Embiid is my third most exposed center. I'm actually really light on Rudy Gobert. I'm really light on Clint Capella. Neither of those two decisions make me feel really comfortable. Are you doing anything with Capella and or Gobert?
I like Gobert. Capella, I think, is viable, except I have such a strong lean towards Joel Embiid on this slate. And I mean, the other thing to consider here with Capella is that the Knicks games are played at such a dreadfully slow pace that it really caps his overall ability to see as many rebounds because there's just not going to be as many possessions in the game. So while Clint Capella, I don't think there's anything terrible about him as a play. I'm not sure the upside is all that substantial in a game that is a 213 point total.
I missed a couple super chats, so I want to touch on them. William Fields had 2 of them. Both of them were rooted in conversations about DeAndre Hunter at 4K, which we touched on without me even knowing that we needed to touch on it. So I think we got our DeAndre Hunter thoughts out. Our boy Soul Dope had the super chat. Here comes the 3v3 on FanDuel. Are you ready?
As ready as I'll ever be.
Westbrook, Mitchell, Rui, Simmons, Beal, Gallo.
Let me see if I could find the super chat because it's so much easier when I could read the names in front of me because
it's pretty far back at this point.
All right. So read me the names one more time.
You sent it, and I thought you were going to have it. All right. Westbrook, Mitchell, and Rui. Okay.
Yep.
Simmons, Beal, Gallo.
Oh, Simmons, Beal, Gallo.
I agree. Not close. There I got the William Fields question again. Anime Lingo had one, forgot to give us a question, then brought another one. Are Gibson and Noel splitting minutes? And if so, who's better? Yes, they're splitting minutes. To me, Nerlens Noel is significantly better.
So here's one thing that's going to make it not, I think relative to ownership, I would say I think Noel's probably the better GPP play. But I do think now as I'm starting to make lineups again, running it now that we know that Noel is in, it does make it a little bit different for me than I thought it was going to be when I see the Taj Gibson, because it makes a difference that Taj Gibson is power forward and center eligible.
Sure. I still get to Taj, but I have many multiples more of Nerlens Noel at this point.
What did you do for a minute split between the two of them?
27-21.
Okay. I
think the floor there is like 24-24. Like if it just breaks really, obviously barring re-injury, but I don't think it's outside the realm of possibility that it's 30-18 or something like that either.
Yeah, I did 26-22. It's funny, those 1 minutes, the 1 minute difference
huge
probably
swing.
make it does make a swing, and it's something that overall is both of us just kind of guessing. But still, I mean, Taj Gibson down the stretch of the season, the minutes were there. I think Noel's the better GPP play. Gibson probably the better cash play.
Is Capella your biggest fade at center?
Let me look at the most recent run of ownership, and yes.
Okay, looks like we're in the same boat there.
It's pace of play issue.
I'm trying to get to a little bit more Gobert. I don't have much now, so I'm trying to bump him up at least a little bit because I feel a little uncomfortable with it. But Capella then is my biggest fade at center as of right now.
Yeah, I mean, 20% ownership for Capella. I view Joel Embiid as a really, really strong option at center. I view Rudy Gobert as a better option for, somewhat comparable ownership. Right now, we have Clint Capella projected for 20% ownership and Rudy Gobert projected for 27%. So there's a little bit of a gap there, except I've Gobert projected a decent amount higher.
All right, a couple more super chats. Do you have anything else you want to touch on from the center position?
No, I think we've hit on the guys that are really important. Gobert, Embiid, Taj Gibson, Nerlens Noel, Capella. Those are really the core pieces.
Okay. Well, then let's move on to I'm a Tulsa Dog super chat. Embiid and Derrick Rose or Noel and Westy?
Embiid and Derrick Rose. Embiid and Derrick Rose.
I agree. Royce O'Neal versus Taj Gibson on FanDuel is the first part of Soul Dope's question.
Royce O'Neal.
I agree. Any thoughts on Quickly?
His minutes were, I like Quickly a lot as a player, but his minutes are so hard to predict, and his minutes down the stretch of the season really waned a lot. And I think there's just a lot of guys to give minutes there, especially ever since they traded for Derrick Rose. The playing time hasn't always been there. So he played 21 minutes last game, which still isn't really, a crazy significant amount, but look at the final regular season games. Against the Spurs, he played 11 minutes. Against the Hornets, he played 24 minutes. Against the Celtics, he played 14. So, probably anywhere in that 14 to 20 minute range wouldn't really surprise me with Quickly. And to me, even if he gets to 20, I don't know that he's even necessarily likely to have a big game in that amount of playing time. So I think too much has to break right for me to really view Quickly as a good play overall.
I agree. I don't have anything to add there. We've got 16 minutes to go until we get to lock. Want to take some questions for the rest of this bad boy? Do you have anything
Let's do
else
it.
you want to touch on for the slate? Anything that you didn't get in that you would like to before your power goes out?
Hey, listen, we've only got 16 minutes left. It would be pretty cool if just the roof blows off while I'm here. You just see me sucked into a tornado and swooped away.
This video would get a lot of views, that's for sure.
Yeah, it would be cool. Get a viral moment. Maybe somebody leaves a super chat like, "Hey, here's $2 for a new roof."
I have a sneaky suspicion if your roof comes off, you're going with it.
Yeah, I do too. Hey, listen, that's how I've always wanted to go out. He went out doing what he loved. What did you do with the backcourt guys for the Jazz? Are you just assuming that Mitchell is 100% full go and gets his full run?
Yeah, for the most part. I really don't like the Jazz all that much today. I find them very difficult to get to because everybody's just sort of priced like they're expensive. So Royce O'Neal is a guy that I'm getting to no matter what, because I don't think Mitchell really impacts him and values value as far as I'm concerned. Mike Conley actually is the guy that I'm getting to a little bit on DraftKings, but I have minimal amounts of Gobert. I don't have Mitchell. I don't have Boyan. I don't have Ingles. I don't have Clarkson. I'm just pretty anti-Jazz. Not that I'm anti them in this game. I don't love any of their prices. And I think that if the Jazz do smack Memphis around, it's more of a defensive smackdown than the Jazz having to go crazy offensively. And if they just have a normal offensive game, but they shut down Memphis, that doesn't necessarily help from an offensive perspective in DFS. So Royce O'Neal and Mike Conley are the only guys that I'm really looking at.
Yeah, I briefly considered what happens if the Jazz just blow out the Grizzlies in this spot, because I don't think that's a terribly unlikely outcome. But the issue is that I think the Jazz are going to be running such a tight rotation in a close game that there's going to be guys that potentially come onto the court in the fourth quarter that have played 0 minutes the rest of the game, and there's just no real chance at upside. So I figure that's something some people might be thinking about, and it is an angle I thought about, but it just wasn't something that made sense to me.
Okay, we're on the same page there. Soul Dope sent $299 in for a new roof and a Greg replacement. So that'd be good.
Well, he's paid more than he has to. I'll tell you that much.
Yeah, that's actually true. Let's hit some questions from Premium Slack. Favorite guard on DK under 5K.
Favorite guard on DK under 5K. Overall, I'm pretty sure the answer for me is, let me look at the pricing actually.
It's Danny Green for me.
So it's Danny Green-ish, except it depends. Does he have the salary to go up more? You know what I mean? Because Danny Green's the one I have the most exposure to. But also Danny Green isn't guard eligible on DraftKings.
Dude, I typed a G into that cell for sure. So the answer is Seth Curry.
Yeah, I was confused there for a second looking at it, but yeah, it's Seth Curry for me. Actually, I don't even know that there's another guy I would consider other than Seth Curry in that price point.
No, we're on the same page there. Oh God, I gotta get away from whatever the hell that I've got going on there. That's not ideal ownership. Let's walk that back quite a bit.
We just got a bunch of super chats here. I could read some of these off while you're.
We're good.
Okay.
William Fields, Halle Berry is the only storm I'd want to blow me.
Hey, it's clever.
I guess. Yeah,
it's a little bit. It's a little bit of a stretch, but hey, I'll take it.
Yeah, I don't know what to do with that sort of information, but kudos to you. I get a sneaky suspicion she's not interested.
Yeah, I have an even sneakier suspicion that William Fields has watched Catwoman more than once.
Yeah. I, on the other hand, have seen it precisely 0 times.
It is not a good movie.
I can't imagine it would be. Do you think Utah blows out Memphis enough to where the cheap guys are worth playing? Maybe a Bane or Allen in 150. I actually think Melton would be the guy that I would want to get to from the Grizzlies if I were predicting a blowout, but I don't think they get blown out because they score a lot. So I don't really like the ass end of Memphis either.
Yeah, and the other thing to consider that makes Memphis, kind of tricky is even with this being the postseason, this is still a fairly deep rotation. This is a team that has not condensed the rotation as other teams have because we're going to see bigger minutes out of Morant and Valanciunas than we normally would have seen in the regular season. But beyond that, Kyle Anderson, Dylan Brooks, Jaren Jackson Jr., Grayson Allen, DeAnthony Melton, Desmond Bane, Tyus Jones, Xavier Tillman. This is a deep playoff rotation. So a lot of these guys, it's kind of hard for me to reliably say I think any of them have that much upside.
I think that's it for super chats. It is. So I'm going to work our way back to premium Slack. Any Desmond Bain love? My answer is no.
No. He's also not really he's fun. He's had some good games as of late. I think he was a really good draft pick for real life purposes. But if you look at his numbers this year, he was not a great fantasy producer. He played 22.5 minutes per game, scored 17.5 Draftkings points. I don't expect him to play 22 minutes in this spot either. Then plus you also consider it's a tough matchup. And it's hard to get there from a projection standpoint on Bain.
William Fields wants us to know Monsters Ball actually loves the content, though. I guess we're just naming Halle Berry movies. I don't know. John Wick 2 for me, because it's more about Keanu. Neither here nor there. All right. Tank Forever coming in with the DK 3v3. Nothing better. Embiid, Rose, and Favors. Westbrook, Gafford, or O'Neal, and O'Neal, I guess, in that case. I mean, it's the last one because I don't want to roster Derek Favors today.
Yeah, I don't feel great about. Well, I guess Gafford has upside if the Wizards are actually willing to play him minutes today. But I really like Embiid and Rose more than. I'm going to say the Embiid Rose Favors combination just because of how much I like Embiid and Rose. I don't like Favors at all, though.
Yeah, I would go back to the well on that one. Herder versus Neto, last man into the 100K shoot around tonight on DK.
Let's see. He asked Herder or Neto. That's Neto for me.
I mean, I guess my answer is Neto in that he grades out slightly better relative to salary. I have Kevin Herter projected for more fantasy points. I have 0 of both of them, so I would roster neither of them.
Yeah, I think there's a little bit more playing upside in Neto just because he starts, and we've seen him play bigger minutes. I mean, they've gotten a little bit more to Ish Smith in recent games, but I mean, Neto, he played 22 minutes last game. He played 26 minutes the game before overall as a starter this year. He played 26 minutes per game. So I don't feel good about either of them, but slightly lean towards Neto.
Soul Dope with the actual big super chat. Are you playing baseball today by any chance?
I am not. It is really difficult to play baseball when I'm doing NBA Live before lock.
Well, the question is about Colorado and the Mets getting postponed. He liked Marquez on Fanduel. Can you go to minor on Fanduel for GPPs? I don't know shit about baseball right now. So do you have any concept of today's slate?
I'll bring up the top pitcher tool to answer his question. Go to the next super chat and I'll have an answer by the time you finish reading the question.
Gafford, Bertans, or Hunter in a DK single entry?
Bertans.
Yeah, I guess it's the same answer for me.
So let's see. So he said Mets got postponed. He really liked Marquez. Do you think going to minor on Fanduel is a viable option for GPP? So, all right, just looking at our top pitcher tool really quick. We do have Mike Minor picking up a ton of ownership on Fanduel. He's the second most popular pitcher. So obviously that would make him somebody who's viable, but at the same standpoint, we have him with 22.6% ownership and only a 9% chance to be the top scoring pitcher. So if you could swing it, I think the better GPP play is Chris Paddock in the same price range.
There we go. By the way, we've got 2,100 people in here. We are still north of 500 likes. If you're here and you have not hit the thumbs up yet, please go ahead and do so. It helps us out a ton. And then subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell. The more subscribers we get, the more content we can bring to you guys. Remember, everything we're bringing you guys on YouTube is free. So if you could just subscribe, helps us out a lot. But I like seeing that like number climb. Morgan, I saw you ask this twice, so I'm going to ask again, or I'll ask it now finally. Who benefits the most if the Grizzlies Jazz game stays close to the end? Ja Morant, Donovan Mitchell, or someone else?
Who benefits the most? So I would like to say the answer is Royce O'Neal. I hope that's the answer.
I mean, the answer is someone else because it's way more likely to benefit everyone else from those two teams than two specific examples.
I think realistically, my answer is probably Valanciunas or Gobert. I'm still a little iffy on the overall health of Donovan Mitchell.
Is it counterproductive to have Simmons, Harris, Green, and Embiid in the same DK lineup?
Yeah. If you have I don't think you'd have this cap space for it. But I'd say if you're having that kind of setup, you'd probably want to have Bradley Beal in the lineup also. But that doesn't seem viable off the top of my head.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's a 3-game slate. You can get there with a lot of different stuff. But I would need some Wizards at the very least if I had a Sixers starters onslaught going on.
All right. So he said Simmons, Embiid,
Harris, and Green.
All right. So that leaves you with how much leftover salary? Can't be a ton.
Not a lot.
54. So let's see. If you put Bradley Beal in there also at shooting guard, you know what? Do it. If you want to do it, play Bradley Beal also. You have 42,000 in leftover salary for the final 3 spots. And I actually think that's doable. I would do, if you're doing it, I think you have to have Bradley Beal.
All right, let me look at this now. Embiid, Simmons, Harris, and
Green.
Danny Green. If I lock that in right now, I like doing exercises like this.
I would put Beal in it also, though.
I just want to see if Beal just naturally comes into it right out of the gate. So the most exposed guy I get after that foursome is Derrick Rose by quite a bit. Beal does show up in a quarter of the lineups that I've generated so far, so I don't have any real issue saying you can go to Beal. Where does he show up if you do get him? 267 4. Yeah, so you don't even have to drop down. I get to like Beal, Quickly, Taj, Rose. I don't really love it with Quickly. But I'm with you. I think you can get there, but you're going to want to have Beal, I would imagine. In theory, you want to have one of Beal or Westbrook, but Westbrook clearly makes that a way more difficult situation to get to. Alex Len, Trae Young, Royce O'Neal, and Derrick Rose are some of the other 4 guys you can get to if you do add Beal to that lineup. No, wait, he's not in that lineup. Never mind. Anyway, I've spent too much time on this question. Gibson and Rui or Bertans and Bogdan on a FanDuel GPP?
Gibson, I think, by the way, I think Gibson's a much better play on Draftkings than he is on FanDuel.
Agreed.
Boy, I don't really like Bogdanovich all that much on this slate. I don't feel great telling somebody to rebuild their entire lineups with 3 minutes to go until lock, but I'll go with the Gibson and Hachimura side. I don't really like either of those combinations.
I'd go Bertans and Bogdan there. But I would rather have neither of those combinations. Okay. Wait, hold on. It's Bojan Bogdanovic. Why Bogdan? What? Don't write it as Bogdan, Utah, man. It's not his first. Come on, man. Just finish writing it. Write his first name. Their first names are different, not their last names. One of those guys' first names is Bogdan. That's crazy.
It's does that change your answer?
I don't know, man. I was just making up my answer to begin with.
Yeah, it's still Gibson and Hachimura for me.
Fair enough. That I don't have the joke for it, unfortunately. Let's see. What else do we got coming in here? Let's see. Royce O'Neal and Bradley Beal or Jonas Valanciunas and Rui in a DK single entry GPP.
O'Neal and Beal.
Yeah, same. What else do we got going on here? Looking for a good one.
By the way, he apologized to you.
I know. I see it. Yeah. I apologize to you as well, but holy hell, that was confusing. Oh, God. From now on, anybody that asks a question, write the whole name, write the site. I should make a form for it so they have to come in a specific format. Actually, it would be a really good idea.
Yeah, I don't know about all that, but at least get the guy. Listen, write names, right? I think that's a good baseline.
Sure, something like that. TikTok coming on lock, says Game Changer Nick. Yeah, we got 2 minutes to go until lock. Actually, we've got 1 minute to go until lock. Final thoughts. Most exposed players for you today.
Let's go position by position.
Okay.
Oh, is that no good?
Well, I'm only playing on DraftKings, so there's so much overlap that I was just going to read off my top guys.
Oh, okay. I'll go position by position though. Derrick Rose at point guard. Derrick Rose at shooting guard too, so I'll substitute him and I'll say Bradley Beal instead. Then small forward, Danny Green. Power forward, Royce O'Neal. Center, Joel Embiid.
I'm just going to go right down the list. Derrick Rose, Ben Simmons, Nerlens Noel, Danny Green, Bradley Beal, Tobias Harris, Trae Young, Royce O'Neal. And then my center du jour, Jonas Valanciunas. Well, that's it. Look, man, you made it through. No tornado, no hurricane. The hail didn't seem to mess anything up.
Yeah, I'm very frightened though. This is not. I'm scared. I'm shivering, and I'm sure that everything's going to get wiped out as soon as we end.
Well, we are ending right now, guys. Thank you so much for joining us. If you haven't, please hit the like button. On your way out the door, tune in 8 p.m. Eastern time. Ben Raza, Eric Lindquist, breaking down the Charles Schwab. We got PGA Live Before Lock coming up. And shout out to Monkey Knife Fight for being the presenting sponsor of this show. I'm going to go watch some basketball. I hope for everything that I've got going on that all of my highest exposed guys are the best plays on the slate. I would like to win some money. Good luck tonight, everybody. We'll talk to you again tomorrow.